capitalism they fiercely assail. In every speech it's the villain they unveil. From racism, patriarchy they rail. You know ain't nothing and brave they prevail. Ushering in their marches utopia as the end game. The turmoil and strife they aim to overthrow the old, establish their claim. In the vision they abolish everything. They need capitalism for the pain of clever life. These are the four goals of the woke. In actions, words they evoke. From pushing and playing Marxist dreams in the dance of power, steam and steam. In every move their agenda gleams. Remember nothing's ever as it seems. So instrumental. Gain power, destabilize, bring capitalism into the Marxist utopia. That's what they want, that's what they want. Abolish capitalism. These are the four goals of the woke. In actions, words they invoke. From pushing and playing Marxist dreams in the dance of power, scheme and scheme. In every move their agenda gleams. Remember nothing's ever as it seems. So
Hey everyone, welcome to The Cult. The Cult is a show that I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, on X, and on Rumble, where we talk about the culture war, normally doing deep dives into the far left, watching their trainings, watching their classes. In this case, we're actually, I don't even know if this is right or left today, but we are digging into congressional hearings again because Republicans could never be bothered to have a single hearing about critical race theory in schools. Republicans could never be bothered to have a single hearing about gender ideology in schools. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there was and I dismissed it. Republicans could never be bothered to talk about all of the attacks on parental rights that are going on in the public schools. And it's not as though they haven't had the opportunity. They've had the ability to do this for a while now. They even had the ability to do this under Trump. They didn't do it then either. But do you know what we get a never-ending series of right now? Congressional hearings about anti-Semitism on college campuses, because anti-Semitism on college campuses is more important to Republicans than anything else that they have claimed to care about for several years now. So we have to do our due diligence. We have to be responsible. Last night when I was doing yet another Nick Rekieta stream, and if you missed that stream last night, that was something else. Alex Stein also covered Nick Rekieta. Thank you, Naruto, for that. Last night when I was doing my Nick Rekieta definitely didn't get a blowjob from someone who wasn't his wife under the desk stream, I promised that I was going to do something productive today at 5 p.m. And I got to keep my word. And this morning, early this morning, in the wee hours of the morning, when I was still in bed, there was a congressional hearing in which the leadership of Northwestern, UCLA, and Rutgers were called to the carpet in front of Congress in order to answer for the rampant anti-Semitism on their campuses. And this is about 3.5 hours worth of hearings. We're going to watch it. We're going to see what happens because it's important to watch these things. Remember, when we watched the Columbia hearings, we learned that if colleges don't support Israel, they will literally be cursed by God, according to one Republican congressman. We learned that Columbia is integrating Zionist indoctrination into their freshman orientation series. Like, you can learn all sorts of interesting things at congressional hearings because apparently, like, no one actually watches congressional hearings for the most part. except for us, I guess. And I guess other people do too. I shouldn't say no one watches congressional hearings. Like other people do too. They're looking for their clips where they can own the libs. But you can actually learn a lot from just watching congressional hearings. And so, that's the way it's going to go. With Nick Rekieta, the phrase "we laugh so we don't cry" comes to mind. Oh, I've had so many of Nick Rekieta's fans in my comments going, "How dare you? You are a horrible psychologist. How dare you laugh at this situation?" I'm sorry. Like, I'm not going to apologize. Do you want to know why? And I've said this on the videos. I've watched Nick Rekieta drag people before that were in similarly, if actually not worse, situations. And so, you know what? You make your bed, you lie in it. And that's just the way it goes. Also, I did listen to some of Nick Rekieta did a live stream on Locals last night, I think. And it wasn't a members only live stream. So I joined his Locals community and I listened to his live stream. He actually sounds fine. Honestly, he sounds fine. Now we know he's probably not fine, but he sounds fine. And I had Nick Rekieta's fans in my comments today going, "He is literally dying." They sound like a bunch of goddamn leftists. "He is literally dying." I'm like, well, I just listened to his stream in Locals and he doesn't actually sound like he's dying. Now, he might be regretful of some of the decisions that he's made in the past several days, but he doesn't sound like he's literally dying to me. People fall down, they get back up again. That's what we hope for anyway. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that anymore right now because we are going to be focusing in on things that are responsible. We're going to be watching some congressional hearings. But you know what I figured out over the past couple weeks? Listen, I'm starting to figure out that if I do gossipy content in the evenings, then that gets me into people's watch histories because in YouTube, like basically none of my views come from people who are actually subscribed to my channel from the subscriptions page. All of the views either come from people who proactively show up to my channel at 5 p.m. because they know I always live stream at 5 p.m. or they watch the replay later, or they get served a video on their homepage in the recommendations. And that is basically the only way people view content on my channel. So like you might see like I have 105,000 subscribers. It really means nothing because none of my views come from the subscription feed at all. But one of the things that gets my videos recommended to people so they actually come and watch them is if I get into their watch history in some way. Now, people who are not necessarily inclined to watch socialism will watch a gossipy video about Nick Rekieta. They will watch a video where we're talking about Jack Posobiec. They will watch a video where we are, messing around talking about James Lindsay, and that at least gets my content into their watch history, which makes it more likely that they're going to be recommended my content when I actually go live and do stuff like this. So if we do the gossipy things sometimes, that is going to, yes, like just pearly things. Exactly. So I'm starting to figure out, and we already kind of knew this, but now I'm kind of deciding to make a little bit of more concerted effort at it, because if I do the gossipy things at night sometimes, that means that maybe more people will show up for the things that are actually important because the videos will actually be recommended to them. And so on that note, this is not the only stream I'm going to do today. We are going to do another Nitwits episode later tonight, and it's going to be around 11 o'clock at night. And that's going to give me some time to do the stream we're going to do right now and to be we're going to eat our vegetables first, like you should do. And then I'm going to take a little bit of a break and probably get some dinner. And have I even eaten today? Yes, I did. I had eggs earlier. Okay. I was just making sure. Some days I forget to eat. That's like, I mean, people can call me fat on the internet all they want, but there are legitimately days I don't eat like all day. And then 8 o'clock at night rolls around and I'm like, have I even eaten today? And no, I haven't eaten today. So I have to go. Anyway, so we're going to do this congressional hearing, and then I'm going to take a little bit of a break and, have some downtime and do some other stuff. And then around 11 o'clock at night, we're going to come back and we're going to do this Nitwits episode where we are going to be watching, and several people told me to watch this. Apparently, Dave Rubin had James Lindsay on his show for like a whole hour where all they were doing was like shilling for Israel and talking about conservative politics the whole time. And James Lindsay is not a conservative, but apparently Dave Rubin deems James Lindsay to be an expert in all things conservative politics, which I'm sure is going to go over well with some of the actual conservatives that are calling him woke right now, like Jack Posobiec. So I thought we would watch this later on tonight. I was hoping it would kind of be like a shorter segment because people kept telling me to watch this, and I was like, oh, I thought maybe I would do it before the congressional hearing, but then I realized it was a full show. It's like an hour long. And so I was like, no, we have to do a separate stream for that. So that's what we're going to do. Everyone can mark their calendar. And listen, if you don't want to stay up late and do a late night stream with us, that's cool, man. The replay will be available tomorrow. You don't have to be here live, only if you want to. You know, don't rob yourself of any sleep or anything like that. It's okay. It's always going to be here later. Unless I say something really bad and then it'll get taken off the channel. But we're going to assume I don't do that for right now. If late night gossip streams get more views and viewers, Dr. K, I'm all for it. It's frustrating, isn't it? Because my socialism and leftist content is really effing good. It's the best coverage of the left on the internet. I stand by it. If you think there is someone doing better coverage of the left on the internet than me and doing a better job of teaching people what the left is actually doing than me, then name them. Honestly, give me a name, because if there's someone doing better coverage than me, I want to see what they're doing. But it's so frustrating because the content that I do, like on the like watching congressional hearings, is like meaty content. It's content that you kind of have to be in the mood for, and not everyone wants to watch a congressional hearing. Not everyone wants to watch a socialist training. Not everyone wants to do these deep dives that we do into the most dystopian thing that you will ever see in your life. And so we have to try to get people in different ways, because I would like to expand my audience organically on the good content. Because God knows these feckless influencers are never going to actually direct people here, which is what they should be doing anyway. Yeah, like the quartering has like millions of subscribers. That's really all that needs to be said, isn't it? So we do what we can, and I actually do want to watch this anyway. So thank you, seamstress. There's no one doing it better than me, obviously. Yup, e-drama sells, but we have to convert them over to the good content. So what we need to do when we're doing these gossipy streams is create a fun environment that is not shit posting, that is nice for people to be in. Because I do really think that when people experience like what my community is like and what my chat is like, and it's so different than all these other influencers, and people who normally are quiet in other places actually get a chance to talk and participate because they're not being attacked by idiots on the internet all the time, I do think it makes a difference. So let's create a welcoming environment for new people and get them watching the important stuff, and then we'll really blow their minds after that. So we're going to do this stream now. We're going to do the late night stream at about 11 p.m. tonight, so mark your calendar for that. I firmly believe many people like the quartering are only where they are because they were one of the first, and if they had to start over, they would never be as big as they are today. Yeah, I actually do believe that as well, but it is what it is, you know? It is what it is. And to be fair, I'm the first person doing the type of coverage on the left that I am, and so I do think that even though there are like our shills like James Lindsay that have a larger audience than me at some point, I do eventually think this is actually going to pay off, because there ain't no way that anyone is catching up to me ever. We got so far ahead by just focusing on leftist trainings and real world stuff that there is no way that anyone else is ever going to catch up to me ever. And I do think that that is going to pay off at some point. I'm starting to feel some momentum building behind it, and people are seeing and they're looking for this type of content, and people are starting to figure out that James is lying to them. Like, battle lines are drawn, and I am clearly on the opposite side of the Zionist shills. And I think that only bodes well for what I'm doing. And I think it bodes well for attracting authentic people who actually want to know what's going on in the world and who actually care about the truth and all that, and don't just want to suck down a political narrative. Anyway, a couple things before we get started. Number one, please make sure you subscribe to my Substack, which of course is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. If you missed the stream yesterday, we did talk about a bunch of stuff, but I did post a clip over on the Substack of the section where I was talking about what socialist tattoos and haircuts look like. So if you missed that, definitely check it out on the Substack. And the reason I think this is important is one of the reasons that I think it's so important to teach people the language of the left, the language of socialists, is so that you understand when you run into socialists in the real world, what they look like, what they sound like, because, and people can attest to this that have been watching my socialism content for a while, Once you become fluent in the language of socialist, you start seeing it show up everywhere in places that you had never imagined that it would show up. So you start seeing it show up at your kid's school, at your grocery store, at your coffee shop, in the movies, at restaurants, on commercials on TV. Like it starts to show up everywhere. And you really see how the left has tentacles, literal tentacles, into every part of our culture. And that's when it gets really terrifying. But language, of course, is not the only way we can identify them. We can also identify them because sometimes they look like socialists. And this is actually, I do think it's valuable to say, to be able to spot when people have socialist tattoos on their arms, because normally they are on their arms. I think it's helpful to spot when people have the socialist haircut. If they have both, then that's an extra identifier for you to be able to say socialist. Do not trust. Mayday, 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 mayday. Do not trust. So it is important that we pay attention to these things, and paying attention to the patterns of how this anarcho-communist subculture shows up in the real world. Actually, funny story. If you go into this article, so we were wondering the origin of this mullet haircut, where you've got the mullet, the shaved sides of the head, and then these little bangs. And Bot actually found this article that is linked to from the Substack. Your mullet is more than a haircut. It's a political statement. A hair historian explains. This is actually from last year, last April, and it is a whole article explaining how the mullet haircut that is part of like the socialist subculture is basically a form of like political rebellion. So that was a great find from Bot. So check that out if you feel so inclined. Of course, if you do want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business, because I am 100% funded by you, please consider signing up for a membership on my Substack of $8 a month, $80 a year. I cannot do this without grassroots funding, guys. It is very important to me that I maintain grassroots funding. I don't ever want to have to go out to any big donor like James Lindsay did in order to get my project off the ground, because this is why James Lindsay is a sellout today, and we are still focused in on truth and what matters and actual receipts and stuff like that. Because my only obligation, because I am entirely grassroots funded by you, is to show you receipts and tell you the truth, and then you decide what you do with that information. I'm able to do that because of the people who pay me $8 a month or $80 a year on my Substack. I really do appreciate it. You get access to a variety of perks, including 2 weekly Zoom calls with me, including access to supporter-only events like Spy Stream, including access to my Inner Circle podcast, which is a much more in-depth podcast. And actually, like, I spill the tea a lot more on the Inner Circle podcast about what I actually think and what actually is going on, because it's subscriber only. You can find information about that on the Substack. You're also going to get access to the supporter Discord that only my supporters have access to, where we have we're having a massive we're amassing an archive thanks to the good work of Stony Baloney, who is also Human Centipede in the chat. He's doing a great job of archiving anarcho-communist, like queer Marxist subculture zines for us, zines and communiques and all this stuff. And so that we got a nice archive going in there. We also have the zine project that we're working on in terms of people making propaganda that we're going to be able to go out into the real world with. We're not going to talk about that today, but it's a really fun project. So if you want to make propaganda to perpetuate an unwoke subculture, because I am trying to create a little counterculture thing here where, listen, I think that part of the difference between my work and the work of like the conservative shills is I'm trying to create something that people want to be a part of, that's fun to be a part of, that makes studying the left into a game, into an activity where we can all, come together and like actually have a good time with it. Because the content that we go over is pretty heavy, but it doesn't have to feel that way. And so if we can create a little subculture around this, like, we are the counterculture. I firmly believe this. Conservatives are never going to create a counterculture. They're just not built that way. And is there anyone else creating an unwoke counterculture? I don't think there is. So we're working on a propaganda project that's not going to be for online. That's going to be for the real world. And so you can join us in the supporter Discord for that. We also do movie nights in the supporter Discord on Sundays at 8 p.m. We are watching Shaun of the Dead this week as a birthday movie for LK. Lots of great stuff going on, and you get access to all of that by becoming a supporter on the Discord, and I really do appreciate it. I also want to do a reminder for people in that I do still, for about another week, we have a 25% off sale off of everything in the Unwoke art store because I'm going to be cleaning out a lot of the designs because there's way too many designs in the store. I feel like it's overwhelming choice for people at the moment. And so I'm going to be paring down a lot of the designs in the store to be like the very best ones that I love, and I'm going to be doing a lot more in terms of limited edition merch and stuff like that. So this is going to be a last call for many things in the Unwoke art store. So I want everyone to have a chance to do that. If you use the promo code REDMAY, REDMAY, and you purchase over $100 more in stuff, you're going to get 25% off your entire order. So you can get a lot of cool stuff. You can even get some free stuff depending on, how much money you spend. You could get a free t-shirt, free hoodie, like depends on what you want, but you can check out the Unwoke art store. We got a lot of cool stuff in there, including the Plague Doctor Unwoke Wiki limited design shirt for the month of May. We got all sorts of cool zine content in there. You can check that out. These are shirts inspired by the zines that we're making in the supporter Discord. Check this out, like this Animal Farm one, and those are Lenin's eyes on the pig. How cool is that? This is like cool stuff that you like used to be able to buy in like a record store, stuff like that. We, of course, thanks to Bot, have the classic 4 goals of the woke left design, and now of course we have the song at the intro to do that as well. And so you can buy that on a shirt, or actually a lot of people have bought the Unwoke the framed print because it looks so cool. I mean, come on, this is one of the coolest designs in the store right now. You can definitely get that. That one's not going to be going anywhere, just to be clear. Lots of cool stuff that you can get in the Unwoke art store. The socialist or gay design, the real Marxism design. And again, I'm going to be paring down a lot of the content, so this is going to be your last chance for many of the items in the store. So go check it out, get some cool stuff, get some gifts, stuff like that. I don't do 25% off discounts really ever, and certainly not off of everything in the store all at once. So this is a rare opportunity to pick up some cool swag, man. And of course, all purchases do go to support the work I'm doing, and I do really appreciate it. All right, we're going to be digging into our content today, but I do just want to point out a couple of things. So number one, we are going to be watching the ongoing anti-Semitism congressional hearings. And UCLA and Rutgers are 2 of the schools that are going to be testifying today. Northwestern is also going to be testifying as well. I just want to point out that that if the I wonder if the Congress people that are grilling the Rutgers leadership know that Rutgers spent over $225,000 on a far left lecture series that, among other things, that was completely pro-Palestinian lecture series that, among other things, taught that Israelis are routinely R-ing Palestinians as a form of like collective punishment. Now, you can have your opinion about whether or not that's happening. I'm not making commentary on that. What I am saying is this is something that Rutgers worked with the Mellon Foundation to fund to the tune of $225,000. And we know that because we watched this lecture. We watched this lecture on this show back at the beginning of April. And so you can go on there and see what Rutgers is teaching their students. I wonder if anyone bothered to show that to people in Congress. I guess we'll find out. The other point I want to make is, listen, these hearings are so stupid because the fact of the matter is that conservatives, Republicans continuing to push this anti-Semitism line, it's actually making the problem worse on college campuses. Because you'll remember UCLA's encampment was cleaned out a couple weeks ago. They had an epic battle at UCLA. The UCLA students actually took over some of the buildings. They put up all these barricades. They actually held off the police for like several hours. They did not roll over and die, but eventually the police did win and they took down the encampment. Well, guess what? Because UCLA's chancellor was testifying in front of Congress today, the encampment that was taken down a couple weeks ago went right back up. Would the encampment have gone back up if the students at UCLA were not trying to make a point literally on the day that the Republicans were calling the chancellor to testify in front of Congress? I don't think they would have. And here's why I say that. Because when the Columbia president testified in front of Congress, the exact same thing happened. The students escalated the protest on the day of the congressional testimony in order to take advantage of the congressional testimony in order to make a bigger point. If the congressional testimony hadn't happened, would the encampment at Columbia even have happened? I don't think we can say for sure, if I'm honest about it. Or if the congressional testimony hadn't happened, would the encampment have stuck around as long as it did? Would it have grown like it did? Would it have been as impactful as it did? Would it have spread throughout the country like wildfire like it did? I don't think it would have. I think Republicans are trying to create and perpetuate this problem because it allows them to kiss the ass of Israel and to raise more money. And so they're not interested in solving this problem. They're going to be grandstanding today. They're going to be like, oh, we want to get rid of anti-Semitism on campuses. But you know what Republicans would really do if they wanted to get rid of the college protesters? They would shut the fuck up. That's just the truth. They would ignore them. If the protesters at Columbia had just been ignored in the first place, the encampment wouldn't have quadrupled in size to the point where it was an unmanageable situation. All they had to do was shut up and ignore them, and the problem would have gone away. And I know that's not the answer that people want to hear, but that's reality. These protests had been going on for months. These protests didn't spring up from nowhere. They had been going on and slowly escalating for months. And I really do believe that if Republicans had not called Columbia's president to testify in front of Congress, the students at Columbia wouldn't have had the opportunity to make a much bigger splash than they otherwise had the opportunity to make. And the protest still would have happened, but it would have kind of fizzled out as finals were happening and graduation was happening. But no, the students got a giant ass spotlight on them because the president testified in front of Congress. They took advantage of it, which was a really smart strategic move on their part. And then the whole thing went nationwide from there. And now the same thing is happening at UCLA. The UCLA chancellor gets called in front of Congress to testify and answer for the rampant anti-Semitism. The encampment was torn down a couple weeks ago by the police, but guess what? Because the chancellor was getting called to testify in front of Congress, the encampment went right back up. Literally all conservatives had to do, if they actually wanted to solve this problem, was do nothing. Just ignore them. Don't feed it. Leave it alone. Let the students say what they want to say. If the students are not being violent and they're just holding up signs and chanting their chants, they might be saying things that you don't like. But guess what? This is America. We have free speech in America. We have the right to protest in America. You are allowed to say things that other people find offensive. College students are allowed to say things that other people find offensive. Non-college students are allowed to say things that other people find offensive. That is the entire point of free speech in the first place. So what you do is you let them have their protest, you let them have their signs, you let them chant their chants, and then you don't pay any attention to them, and you don't give them any coverage on the news, and you don't have massive congressional hearings about them that give them an opportunity to ramp it up to make an even greater impact. And then the situation slowly fizzles out because you're not feeding it. The congressional hearings is basically, the protests are like this little teeny tiny like campfire, right? They're like a little teeny tiny campfire. And it's a small fire. It's a fire, but it's a small little manageable fire and nothing's really happening, and it might be annoying to some people, but fine. The congressional hearings are basically Republicans taking a can of lighter fluid, going up to this teeny tiny little campfire, spraying the entire goddamn can of lighter fluid on the campfire, and then doing one of these where the lighter fluid is going all over the place. And what was a little tiny campfire then goes. That's what Republicans are causing right now with these hearings. And you have to question, is this what they want? Because it kind of seems like this is what they want. Because this is allowing them to grandstand. This is allowing them to fundraise. This is allowing Elise Stefanik to go over to Israel to say literally that the United States should give Israel whatever it wants without question. To have these moments where they're on TV, they want the problem to stay. And we're going into summer, and the students, even though graduation has already happened, are not actually slowing down. You can see the students at UCLA have actually already decolonized a building. This is from our friend Stu Studio. He's doing a great job of coverage, as always. Some of the best coverage of the protests of anyone on the internet right now. The UCLA students have already taken over a building, just like the Columbia students took over a building. So we'll see what happens there. I also want people to know that Harvard's graduation was today. massive walkouts from Harvard's graduation. And again, this was entirely caused by Harvard because Harvard entered into negotiations with the students running the encampment, and the students agreed to take down the encampment. And then Harvard lied to the students, and Harvard went back on their promises they made to the students. And then the students got really pissed. And now there are thousands of students walking out of Harvard's graduation. And here's another angle from it. This is a march down, this is in Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is all from Harvard's graduation today. So you guys think this is going away. This is not going away. Just because they're graduating doesn't mean this is going away. It's just going to transition into something else. How do we know it's going to transition into something else? Well, if we look in, which one do I want to go to? Hang on. If we look in, well, it would be in this one. If we look in the literature, in the queer anarchist literature, they're literally saying, where did I put this? Hang on. Not that. I'm not sure exactly where I put this, but there is actually so I have a community member that's at the University of Michigan, and she walked through the Michigan encampment for me, and she picked up all the literature that they're handing out at the Michigan encampment. And what they're saying is that they so the right thinks that they are oh, you know what this is? This was in the Actively Unwoke podcast. I know where it is now. Hang on. This is a free podcast that I did where I did a podcast about 3 things you need to know to understand the pro-Palestine protesters. Let me pop this in the chat so you guys can see for yourself. So this is a piece of literature that came from the University of Michigan, but this is being echoed. I've seen this in other places around the country where so conservatives thought they were getting one over on the libs when they were like, no, most protesters aren't even students. Conservatives thought they were winning when they said that. Well, let's listen to what the protesters had to say in response to conservatives being like, most of them aren't even students. This is literally handed out at the University of Michigan encampment. Number 3, break open the university gates. To those holding down campus occupations, your first task is to open the campus to the community and reject the distinction between students and outside agitators. The popular movement for Palestine is currently based out of the universities, but students are not the sole leaders, and non-students possess a reservoir of knowledge and experience to expand the struggle beyond the campus. They want to expand the struggle, the revolution. Struggle means revolution. They want to expand the glorious struggle beyond the campus. We must create our own popular cradle of resistance. The most effective occupations have been where students have strong alliances with non-students and where they connect the struggle to free Palestine with the struggle against U.S. fascism, that means capitalism, and cop cities, that means abolish the police, everywhere. So, do you really think that the 1,000+ students who walked out of Harvard's graduation today are just going to stop protesting just because they just graduated from Harvard? They're literally handing out literature on the campuses saying, we need to go outside the campus and into the streets. And guess what? It's summer. A lot of them are going to have time on their hands. What do you think they're going to be doing with it? They're going to go back to wherever they live, or maybe they're even going to stay in the cities where they were in school anyway, and they're going to organize protests. They're going to be outside the college campuses, and then it's a problem that all of us have to deal with. So conservatives running around saying, most of them aren't even students. That's actually not the own you think it is. Because if all of them were students, they would be confined to the college campuses and all of it would just fizzle out when they all go home. But because they are not all students, because they are working with these outside groups and they're not Soros funded, that is conservative propaganda. That's not true. We know who these are. The Party for Liberation and Socialism is one of those groups rather. Because they have been working with these outside groups since the beginning, they're going to be completely set up all over the country to transfer what they were doing on college campuses into the public sphere where we all have to deal with them. That's what's going to happen. This does not end at graduation. So get ready, guys. It's going to be another summer of love. That's something I want people to keep in mind as we are watching these congressional hearings today. Please mount the like button for me if you would be so kind. Of course, mounting the like button lets YouTube know to actually recommend my content, and I greatly appreciate it. We are going to be watching the anti-Semitism congressional hearings, and we're going to see what's what. Gotta find where they start, though.
Gradually nurtured.
All right. No captions available. Sorry for people who like captions.
The Committee on Education Workforce will come to order. I note that a quorum is present. Without objection, the chair is authorized to call a recess at any time. I want the door shut. It's too noisy. Okay. In Ernest Hemingway's novel, The Sun Also Rises, two characters are discussing bankruptcy. How did you go bankrupt? Asked Bill. Two ways. Two ways, Mike responds. Gradually, then suddenly. No three words better apply to the decline in post-secondary education that has transpired. Gradually, then suddenly. These three little words paved the road that led to today's hearing. Over the course of years, decades even, universities gradually nurtured a campus culture of radicalism in which anti-Semitism grew and became tolerated by administrators. The committee's been steadfast in its dedication.
It should burn everyone that cares about leftist indoctrination that the only thing that Republicans are concerned about when it comes to the radicalization on college campuses that has gone on under their watch for decades, the only aspect of it that they're concerned about is anti-Semitism. They're not concerned about anti-racism. They're not concerned about critical race theory. They're not concerned about gender ideology. They're not concerned about any anti-capitalist indoctrination that's happening all over the place. They're not concerned about queer theory. They're not concerned about disability studies. They're not concerned about that studies. They're not concerned about any of it. They're not even saying the word Marxism, even though we all know what this is. This is Marxism. The only thing that they are concerned about is anti-Semitism. And these are the same people that go on the stage of CPAC and they're like, Marxist, 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 Marxist. This is the same people that go back to their communities when they're trying to get reelected and they're trying to raise money going, socialism, 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 socialism. None of them actually care about it. The only thing they actually care about is anti-Semitism. Juneteenth is next month and the day after my birthday, so watch out around the 17th to the 21st of June for socialist action. Yeah, June's going to be fire. Thank you, MacB. 70 years of radical communist promotion was okay, but a single anti-war protest about Israel in Congress, well, Republicans in Congress, lose their effing minds.
To attacking the roots of anti-Semitic hatred, including anti-Israel DEI bureaucracies and questionable foreign funding. Then
anti-Israel DEI bureaucracies. These people.
Suddenly, over the course of weeks, days even, universities burst into anti-Semitic chaos. October 7 ignited a powder keg of pro-terror campus fervor, a shocking spectacle for the American public. Suddenly, the radicalized zealots found a cause and group that they could graft their hate onto. Somehow, Jews fit neatly into DEI's oppression matrix, thereby justifying anti-Semitism. In the morning following October 7, radicalized students have harassed, assaulted, and intimidated their Jewish peers. These anti-Semitic protests have led to hijacking buildings, erecting unlawful encampments, disrupting classrooms, and canceling commencements. They've been the principal agents of anti-Jewish harassment and violence and have made an absolute mockery of so-called university leaders. That's why the committee is yet again calling for accountability from those in charge of universities. Today, with Mr. Michael Schill of Northwestern University, Dr. Gene Block of UCLA, and Dr. Jonathan Holloway of Rutgers University. Each of you should be ashamed of your decisions that allowed anti-Semitic encampments to endanger Jewish students. Mr. Schill and Dr. Holloway, you should be doubly ashamed for capitulating to the anti-Semitic rule breakers. Our job today is first and foremost to hold those who are supposed to be in charge to account. Dr. Gene Block, you will testify to the horrific violent events that unfolded at UCLA, leading to 243 arrests.
Will anyone talk about the fact that pro-Israel protesters showed up at the UCLA encampment and started beating the shit out of the pro-Palestine protesters, like with sticks and clubs and things? Because that actually did happen. It wasn't the pro-Palestine protesters who started that. It was the pro-Israel protesters.
You cleared the encampment only after a violent riot erupted. For days, you stood by as Jews were assaulted and the illegal checkpoints blocked access to campus in broad daylight.
Yeah, why do they care about
Your
disrupting
actions were
classes?
too little, too late. Second, the committee will highlight the concessions.
Like, this is if I keep stopping this often, we're never going to get this done. But like, this is literally conservatives. Conservatives complain about what is being taught on college campuses. They're like, all the students are being indoctrinated into Marxism. All their classes are Marxism. It's all indoctrination. And then the classes get disrupted by the Marxists. And they're like, no, the classes can't get disrupted. The students have to be able to go to class. It's like, decide what you want. Are the colleges the focal point of Marxist indoctrination? Which the answer is yes. Or, like, why do you want students going to class when they're being indoctrinated into Marxism? It's like, choose. You can't have both. You can't say the college classes are the problem and then say the college classes, it's an emergency that the college classes never get disrupted.
Universities doled out to rule breakers. Dr. Holloway, you accepted 8 of the 10 encampment demands, including an egregious amnesty deal to Rutgers students and faculty involved in the encampment. I'd like to know what sort of message you think that sends to your Jewish students. Mr. Schill, you cut a disgraceful deal with the encampment that prompted 7 Jewish members of your own anti-Semitism
I'm
advisory
going to turn my
committee
mic down a little bit. I think I'm
resign in
loud.
protest. You and President Holloway struck deals that guarantee jobs and admissions to Palestinians in apparent violation of federal anti-discrimination laws. I'd like to know how you think your quotas comply with the Civil Rights Act. Those who are in charge of universities who negotiate with pro-terror protesters are not doing their jobs.
Yeah, okay.
Taxpayer dollars have no business funding universities without principles that align with the principles of this country. Each of you refuse to enforce your own rules.
The principles of this country, according to Republican Virginia Fox, is that we are all required to support Israel. Or you don't get taxpayer funding if you don't support Israel. That definitely seems right. Okay.
Preserve campus safety and protect Jewish students. Finally, I want to make one thing clear. The purpose of these hearings is not to enact right-wing cancel culture as purported by the left.
It is actually, Virginia.
Is to end anti-Semitic violence and harassment on campus. Full stop. Hearings with college presidents are meant to help guide post-secondary education policies going forward that meet the needs and respect the rights of all students. We will certainly
except the
keep your
anti-war
answers to our
protesters who are
questions in
terrorists,
mind
according to you.
as the committee conducts further business. With that, I yield to the ranking member.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank our witnesses for appearing today. There's no question that we can do more to combat anti-Semitism, not just on college campuses, but everywhere. No one should be threatened, harassed, or attacked because of who they are or who they worship. Moreover, students cannot learn if they feel unsafe. Yet here we are for the fifth time in 6 months holding another hearing to complain about the problem of
The fifth congressional hearing in 6 months on anti-Semitism on college campuses. Really think about that. Again, as a reminder, Republicans held 0 hearings about critical race theory in public K through 12 schools. Republicans held 0 hearings about gender ideology in K through 12 public schools. Republicans held 0 congressional hearings to deal with the attacks on parental rights that are going on schools all across the country under their watch. Republicans have held 0 congressional hearings about the impact of queer theory in the K through 12 public schools. Republicans are holding no congressional hearings about Marxist indoctrination anywhere. They could do all this stuff. They have the ability to do all this stuff, but they have held 5 hearings in 6 months about anti-Semitic indoctrination in on college campuses and anti-war protesters that they say are supporting terrorism when in fact they're just anti-war protesters.
anti-Semitism, but no work is being done to find a meaningful solution to address animus on college campuses. Complaining about a problem is not a solution. It certainly riles people up, generates a lot of media coverage, but it doesn't solve anything. To the best of my knowledge, the only change that has resulted from these hearings is that a handful of individuals have lost their jobs. Schools have had to dedicate hours that they could have spent working to combat discrimination on campus instead of responding to the majority's the legal requests, and law firms advising college presidents have made a lot of money preparing their clients to testify in these
He's
hearings.
exactly right what he's
In
saying.
2017, after white supremacists marched through the grounds of the University of Virginia, chanting slogans such as "Jews will not replace us," I wrote a letter to my Republican colleagues asking for a hearing to discuss rising tensions and discrimination on college campuses. Regrettably, the committee did not hold any such hearings, and we did not address the issue at the time. Jewish students, in fact, all students, have a right to attend college free from hostility and in compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. There's no excuse for anti-Semitism on campus, and everyone is entitled to a safe harbor. And this is why we should ensure that the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights has the resource it needs to investigate where campuses are failing to protect against anti-Semitic acts or otherwise not protecting against civil rights violations. And I believe we should increase funding for that office in light of the increased number of complaints. But last year, my Republican colleagues called for a 25% cut in funding for that office. This would have been a significant impediment for the Department of Education's efforts to investigate these issues. Meanwhile, DEI programs, which try to bring people together, are being disparaged and eliminated. But as I've said before, hateful incidents of anti-Semitism do not happen in isolation. They're the byproduct of this country's century-long history of white supremacy and anti-Semitism. And we cannot feign surprise at hate speech on our college campuses. And I'll note again that campuses are polarized, as is our society. We've unfortunately seen a disturbing rise in incidents not only of anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia, racism, homophobia, and all other forms of hate.
All
and,
the isms.
all of which need to be addressed. But as Mr. Lawrence notes in his testimony today, colleges and universities exist to examine complex issues, challenges, and ideas to provide a forum in which issues and opinions can be explored and can be debated. Freedom of inquiry and expression must include the right to protest. And he also notes that the limits of this expression are reached when actual threats or undue disruption of the university's operations are involved. No one in this panel is advocating for violence, harassment, or disruption of the university's operations, but students have the right to peacefully protest and express their opinions, regardless of whether or not those opinions are politically unpopular or morally abhorrent. In public colleges and universities, two of which are with us today, the First Amendment protects both popular and agreeable speech and speech
I mean,
that people can.
everyone understands, right, that DEI is not gone. You guys understand that, right? Every time Chris Rufo claims that DEI is dead, he's lying. DEI is not dead. DEI is being done every day. It may not be called DEI anymore, but just because they got rid of a few employees does not mean that DEI is gone in any way. In fact, DEI is not even the thing that you need to be most worried about. DEI is like several layers down from the most important problems. DEI is like a low-level delivery mechanism for like Marxism, but it's like it's not even the most important delivery mechanism. It's not even the second most important, the third most important. It's like a low-level thing that the right, because of Chris Rufo, I'm sorry, has latched onto to claim that this is the only thing that matters. No, it's not the only thing that matters. It's not going away. It's never going to go away. They're just going to change the name of it, and they're going to continue to do it anyway. So, and that includes in Florida, by the way. This stuff is taught all over Florida schools. Ron DeSantis is just lying about that.
Reasonably disagree with, including sometimes hateful words. But again, in painting with a broad brush, the majority has attempted to remove any distinction between hate speech and genuine political protest.
Hang on. Then you don't understand this. It makes no difference at all. They're going to just reestablish it under a different name. They probably already have. They probably just transferred it all to a different department under a different name. Nothing has changed. There has been just because people got fired and lost their jobs doesn't mean DEI is going away. It just changed forms. And as I said, it's not even the most important thing anyway. It is a low-level delivery mechanism. What about everything that's more important than DEI? DEI is the training for useful idiots. DEI has nothing to do with the indoctrination. The indoctrination happens in K through 12 public schools and in colleges. That's where the activists get created. DEI is like, let's bring along as many useful idiots as we can so that they don't cause problems. But DEI is not making activists. The activists were already made. DEI is a massive distraction that has been created by Chris Rufo. I'm sorry. This is a and he flat out says this. I don't even think I'm speaking out of school here. Chris Rufo flat out says that he is creating this as a political narrative. It's a political narrative to raise money. That's all it is. And to make certain people famous. That's all it is. It's not solving any problem. They don't actually care about... Chris Rufo does not care about solving this problem. Chris Rufo cares about being the top level conservative activist and the driver of all the political narratives. That's what he cares about. He goes to get awards. He ignores everything that's going on in the real world. But he gets his award, he gets his grants, he gets his clout, and that's all that matters. And again, like, I won't take anything away from him. I think he is an amazing activist. I really, really do. I think that he is very good at what he does. But Chris Rufo is setting himself up to run for office. I hope everyone understands this. That's what his focus is. He's going to run for like Congress or Senate someday. That's what he's doing. And that seems to be his primary motivation.
I'd like to remind everyone that the civil rights movement of years past has always moved public opinion rather than just waiting it for change. Today, 81% of Americans report a favorable opinion of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But in 1966, a Gallup survey found that nearly 2/3 of Americans had an unfavorable opinion of Dr. King. 2 years later, in the immediate aftermath of his assassination, another survey found that roughly 1/3 of Americans felt that he brought it on himself. In closing, as members of Congress, we have the responsibility to hold ourselves to a higher standard and be role models for our communities. By fueling culture wars, as I believe these hearings have done, we're setting an example for others to feed into and continue to escalate the tensions on college campuses.
He's
To
right.
that end,
Exactly.
our students deserve more from us. They deserve
Exactly. The Democrat just said this is just escalating the tensions on college campuses and it's not actually solving any problems. Exactly. Conservatives suck so badly that the Democrats are the voice of reason in the situation.
thoughtful, deliberate conversation about the constitutional questions before us that can lead to a meaningful change. And I hope my colleagues will rise to that challenge. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Pursuant to Committee Rule 8C, all members who wish to insert written statements into the record may do so by submitting them to the committee clerk electronically in Microsoft Word format by 5 p.m., 14 days after the date of this hearing, which is June 6, 2024. And without objection, the hearing record will remain open for 14 days to allow such statements and other extraneous material referenced during the hearing to be submitted for the
Exactly,
official hearing
Rottweiler.
record. I now turn to the introduction of our witnesses, and I recognize Ms. Bonamici to introduce our first witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Schill is Northwestern University's 17th president. He also serves as a professor of law at the Northwestern Pritzker School of Law and a professor of finance and real estate in the Kellogg School of Management. He previously spent 7 years as president of my alma mater, the University of Oregon. He's also served as dean and professor at the law schools of University of Chicago and UCLA, and has also held tenured faculty positions at New York University and the University of Pennsylvania. President Schill founded NYU's Furman Center for Real Estate and Urban Policy, which has become one of the nation's leading research centers on housing. Welcome to the committee, President Schill.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bonamici. Our second witness is Dr. Jonathan Holloway, who's the president of Rutgers University.
Bro. President Schill. Almost like he was born for this very moment.
In New Brunswick, New Jersey. Our next witness is Mr. Frederick Lawrence, who's the secretary and CEO of the Phi Beta Kappa Society located in Washington, D.C. Our final witness is Dr. Gene Block, who's the chancellor of UCLA in Los Angeles, California. We thank you for being here today and look forward to your testimony. I will remind the witnesses that we have read your written statements, which will appear in full in the hearing record. Pursuant to Committee Rule 8D and committee practice, I ask that you each limit your oral presentation to a 5-minute summary of your written statement. I also remind the witnesses to be aware of the responsibility to provide accurate information to the committee. I will first recognize President Schill for 5 minutes.
That's never not going to be funny.
Thank you, Chairman Fox, Ranking Member Scott, and members of the committee. And also thank you, Representative Bonamici, for that kind introduction. I agree with the committee that anti-Semitism is rising on college campuses, including our own. This committee is also right to be shining a light on the subject for the American people. In that spirit, let me address 4 issues as they relate to Northwestern. Anti-Semitism on campus, our guiding principles of community safety and academic freedom, the encampment itself, and our plans moving forward. First, our universities are on the front lines of the disturbing spike in anti-Semitism that accelerated following Hamas's horrific terrorist attacks on October 7th. Across the country, the open harassment and intimidation of Jewish people on the streets and social media has also infected our classrooms and our campuses. As the descendant of Holocaust victims and survivors, Rising anti-Semitism in the world affects and alarms me personally. I lost relatives
We'll
in the
be going a
Holocaust.
while.
So it is not abstract to me that the
This is
world's
3.5
Jewish
hours long.
population has not recovered to where it was before World War II. The fact that Israel is a cherished homeland is not theoretical to me. It is where family members who survived the war found refuge. My family's history is a constant reminder to me of what can happen when anti-Semitism is allowed to take root.
Thank you, Liquid Marble.
Where there is conduct that threatens the Northwestern community, we must impose discipline, and we have done so. Yet I'll be the first to admit our existing rules and policies are falling short. We must improve our processes to meet the current challenge. At my direction, we'll be working over the summer to update our student conduct code. These new policies
what?
will be in place before students
To
return
say
to
what?
campus. We are confident we can continue to promote two principles at the core of our mission: free expression and academic freedom, while disciplining harassment and intimidation. I want to take a moment to address the encampment at Northwestern and the choices we made. On the morning of April 25th, an encampment was erected on Deering Meadow, an iconic gathering space at the center of our campus. As I watched what was unfolding and at encampments across the country, I believed that the danger it posed grew every day it stayed up. Every day brought new reports of intimidation
So then why
and
didn't you do
harassment.
anything about it? You're the college
And then
president.
on April 28th, the day before the tents came down, the threat of confrontation escalated with the addition of outsiders to the university. For the safety of our entire community, I knew I had to act. We had three options to do so. First option was letting the tents stay up indefinitely. We never seriously considered this option. They were a threat to our community. The encampment was breaking our rules. There was anti-Semitic
rule?
behavior that was making our Jewish students feel
What was
unsafe.
the anti-Semitic
I
behavior?
knew we had to take down the encampment and get it.
What do they define as anti-Semitic behavior? Is holding a Palestinian flag anti-Semitic behavior? Is saying free Palestine, is that anti-Semitic behavior? Were they shouting slurs? Is that what we're talking about? It's like pinky swear, trust me, bro, I promise they were being anti-Semitic. What were they actually doing?
It down quickly and permanently. Second, sending in our student affairs officers and the Northwestern Police Department to make arrests. That was the second option. This option ended up posing too high a risk to our students, staff, and police officers. There were limited law enforcement resources available to the university, and it also created, as we saw around the country, escalation, renewed encampments. Finally, talking with the students about leaving voluntarily. This was the path we took, and the encampment came down in just 5 days. We did not give in to any of the protesters' demands, and the commitments we made are consistent with our values. Importantly, I rejected the main student demand for divestment and will not ever recommend that Northwestern use its resources for political purposes. By engaging students with
Well, that seems to be anti-Zionist, but like there are a lot of Jews that don't support Israel, so. And was that on this college campus or was it on another college campus? Because I mean, I want receipts.
dialogue instead of force, we modeled the behavior we want to apply going forward. Now, going forward, I want to make every one of you know, I am personally committed to fighting anti-Semitism. We are going to reconstitute a task force that will benefit from the information from other task forces. We will revise our student code. We will enhance enforcement. We will increase our security. And we will do what we do best, teaching our students about the dangers of anti-Semitism.
That's what you do best.
I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I look forward to your questions.
That's what you do best, teaching your students about the dangers of anti-Semitism.
I now recognize President Holloway for 5 minutes.
Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member Scott, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jonathan Holloway, and I'm the president of Rutgers University, the state university.
This guy's a problem. This guy's
To
a
help you understand me better, I offer
legit
the following.
leftist.
My maternal great-grandfather, William Johnson Trent, was an early organizer of the colored YMCA in Atlanta and served as president of Livingston College in Salisbury, North Carolina. His son, Bill Trent Jr., my grandfather, was dean of education at Bennett College in Greensboro, North Carolina, before becoming the founding executive director of the United Negro College Fund. Sure. May I start the paragraph at the beginning? Okay, where I left off. Even closer. Okay. His son, Bill Trent, my grandfather, was dean of education at Bennett College in Greensboro, North Carolina, before becoming the founding executive director of the United Negro College Fund. My father, a career officer in the Air Force, was the first Black person to teach at the Air War College in Montgomery, Alabama. I share this to make clear that a commitment to education and to providing access is in my DNA. And though I fully recognize the myriad ways in which my experience and that of our Jewish community are different, I know something about the awful impact of discrimination too. When I served as an intern for the House Ethics Committee, my father brought me to Capitol Hill on my first day. As we approached the committee offices, he said, when I was your age, the only way someone who looked like us could cross the threshold is if you were pushing a food cart. This is part of the reason this discussion matters so much to me. I tell you with pride that Rutgers boasts one of the largest Jewish student populations in America. And I tell you with conviction that we condemn anti-Semitism in the strongest terms possible. We do so today, we did so long before October 7th, and we will always do so. Rutgers, home to nearly 100,000 students, faculty, and staff, takes pride in being a public university. We conduct life-changing research and clinical care, and we educate
My
tomorrow's
dog is
leaders,
voicing her
many of them
opinion on the matter.
first-generation college students, and many of them from low-income families. What's more, Rutgers is world-renowned for its Jewish scholarly community. We are one of only a few dozen universities in America with a Department of Jewish Studies. Our Bildner Center for the Study of Jewish Life holds public lectures, trains teachers on Holocaust education, and hosts the Rutgers Jewish Film Festival.
Rutgers
is also home to the Miller Center
super
on
woke.
Policing and Community Resilience, which is dedicated to protecting valuable communities that are facing anti-Semitism or other forms of intolerance. The Rutgers Hillel and Chabad houses, both among the largest in higher education, sit in the heart of our Big Ten campus in New Brunswick. During my presidency, we have developed a formal partnership with Tel Aviv University focused on faculty collaborations. As part of that relationship, TAU researchers will have a presence in the Health and Life Sciences Center being built in New Brunswick. We find ourselves here today because of the devastation that the Hamas terrorist attacks have wrought. It is heartbreaking to think about the senseless and horrific violence of October 7th, about the hostages still held captive by Hamas 230 days later, about the thousands of Palestinian children killed in the war, about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza that gets worse every day. At Rutgers, this war has been a tragedy for our Jewish and Palestinian communities. Many in our community, searching for a way to curtail this tragedy, have turned to activism and protest. During this period of heightened fear, anxiety, and polarization, Rutgers has focused on 3 essential priorities: to ensure the safety of our community, to affirm and uphold our policies, and to promote dialogue and education. I'd like to emphasize this last point: dialogue and education. Disciplining a person for breaking a rule is easy. It is much harder to build the trust to question and to understand across difference. The battle against anti-Semitism, against bigotry in all of its forms, must be waged with education. We began this semester with lectures and films centered on meeting discrimination with humanity. In New Brunswick, we established an advisory council on anti-Semitism and Jewish life, whose work continues to be pivotal. Jewish studies and Middle Eastern studies faculty have brought Israeli and Palestinian students together in a classroom, not to convince or to change minds, but simply to listen to each other. We have planned training and discussion around anti-Semitism, and we have partnered with the Anti-Defamation League in these efforts.
Oh, have
Like so many
you?
other universities this spring, we saw
Hello.
a protest encampment take shape on our New Brunswick campus. It lasted for a little more than 72 hours. When on the 3rd morning, some student protesters called for a rally to disrupt exams, we moved quickly to shut the encampment down. We made a choice. That choice was to engage our students through dialogue as a first option instead of police action. We had seen what transpired at other universities and sought a different way. Without compromising on my fundamental stance against divestment and boycotts, we agreed to talk and to listen. If ever there was a time for dialogue and a focus on civil discourse, it is now. We are in a highly polarized time where we are confronted.
He basically just said, and my dog is still voicing her opinion on something. He basically just said that he didn't want to bring the police onto campus because this guy is a socialist. This guy's like a far leftist. I've looked into him before. And so he doesn't like the police because he believes that the police are the managers of private property, and socialists hate the police. They want to abolish the police, defund the police, get rid of the prison industrial complex. He's fine with all of that. He didn't want the police involved. But he is completely against conversations around divestment in Israel. Just really effing think about that. This guy literally wants to abolish the police, but he does not want to have any conversations about stopping sending money to Israel. Because that's what divestment means. Stop sending money to Israel, stop sending resources to Israel, stop supporting the Israeli Defense Force, stop doing, that's crazy.
Confronted by objectionable and offensive ideas. Part of what universities do is to help the members of our community navigate that reality so that they become better, stronger, and more resilient citizens. We do that by teaching people to be curious, to listen, and to engage in civil discourse. Finally, let me speak briefly to the Rutgers community. I have heard you over the last several months. I have heard your frustration at injustice in our world, your pain at senseless suffering, and your desire to make Rutgers a stronger community. And for that, I want to say publicly, thank you. We cannot give into the easy path of letting our differences become our divisions. The healing will take time, and through these efforts I mentioned earlier, I'm committed to it. We are committed to it. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, President Holloway. Mr. Lawrence, I recognize you for 5 minutes, and I ask you in advance to pull the mic close to you. Again, we have a very inadequate sound system right now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to thank the committee for inviting me today to speak with you. My name is Frederick M. Lawrence, and I'm here in my personal capacity to share my experience and thoughts as a former law school dean, a former university president, and a professor of American higher education law. The past academic year has deeply challenged all stakeholders of our college and university communities and our society at large. Images of campus protest and unrest will long stay in our minds. It is precisely at times like these that we must hold fast to the first principles that underlie the mission of American higher education and that form the bedrock of a flourishing democratic society and a vibrant culture. Let me first emphasize that the safety of students on campus is critical and it is essential. Students cannot learn if they fear for their safety. No one is permitted to threaten another.
Isn't that
and a
funny?
University is both entitled to
Just
and
a
required to
coincidence.
respond to violence or threats of violence. Similarly, students do not have a right to disrupt the operations of a university unduly. For example, defacing, occupying, or blocking entry to campus buildings is not protected expression, whereas protests outside a building would be. So what should our universities do in these challenging times? When looking at any issues on campus, we always need to keep in mind that the fundamental goal of our colleges is the creation, discovery, and sharing of knowledge. The intellectual challenges of campus life may come from many sources, including protest. That is why colleges should begin by presuming expression, including protest, to be protected forms of academic freedom and a free inquiry.
All right.
Again, the limits of this expression are reached when actual threats or undue disruption of the university operations are involved.
What counts as an actual threat?
Universities must treat all members of a campus community as part of we, not they. There is no they where our students are concerned. We must encourage listening to each other, robust debate, and learning. Schools do best when they seek dialogue across ideological and political differences between and among the members of the campus community, and when they share a commitment to transparent decision-making. This approach is most successful when it draws on months, if not years, of conversation and engagement. I not only
No,
believe
he's
this
just
to be
like
true, I have
just a
seen it.
Former college president.
I have had the opportunity to participate in the application of these principles on campus firsthand, including a recent free expression residency that was part of an ongoing campus-wide engagement on issues of expression, of community, and dialogue. During this time, I met with Jewish and Muslim student leaders to discuss their views on the Israel-Palestine conflict and how it affected their lives. I shared personal stories of a former colleague who suffered the tragic loss of his daughter and son-in-law when they were murdered on October 7th, and a former student born in Gaza whose family confronts the humanitarian crisis there. The ensuing discussion was not easy, but I believe that the students both spoke to and listened to each other. Campus officials have told me that these meetings continue in a spirit of cooperation, not antagonism, with the goal of advancing difficult conversations, even where there are strong feelings and disagreements about key fundamentals. Colleges and universities exist to examine complex issues, challenges, and ideas, and to provide a forum in which issues and opinions can be explored and can be debated. Freedom of inquiry and expression must include the right to protest. As we seek productive paths forward, it is worth recognizing that this is not just a campus issue. We have seen increased polarization throughout the world, so we should not be surprised when this happens as well on our college campuses. And when it does, we have the opportunity to build on the critically important work of role modeling and of teaching how to practice free speech, not just with people who share our views, but also those with whom we disagree passionately and yet with whom we share a community. I thank the committee and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Chancellor Block, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
This is UCLA.
Good morning, Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member Scott, and members of the committee. My name is Gene Block, and I'm the Chancellor at UCLA. Thank you for inviting me here today. Let me start by affirming that all forms of discrimination, including anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, are antithetical to UCLA's values and corrosive to our culture. I wish I could say that our campus has been immune to the disturbing rise of anti-Semitism across our country since October 7th. Sadly, that's not the case. What I can say, and what I'll address today, is how we've been confronting and will continue to confront this challenge. Last summer, I announced my intent to retire this July after leading UCLA for 17 years. These are my final months of...
Yo, he's being sacrificed by UCLA. And I was wondering, I was like, why is the chancellor coming to testify instead of the president? I was like, why are they sending him? The reason they're sending him is he's being sacrificed. He was already going to retire anyway. So he can get grilled. He can get grilled in front of Congress and there's no consequence because he was already retiring anyway. And this actually protects the UCLA president from having to go through this because he's going in her stead. That's funny.
Chancellor of this distinguished institution. While I'm saddened by the recent turmoil on our campus, I'm also proud of our legacy as a university deeply committed to the peaceful expression of differing viewpoints. To have a functioning democracy, we must be able to speak freely about the most consequential events of the day. As a public university, UCLA is subject to a dual legal mandate: the First Amendment obligation to protect free speech on campus, and the obligation under federal laws to protect students from discrimination and harassment. This balance is often difficult to achieve, and it has been especially difficult since October 7th. I'm fully aware that many of our Jewish students have had to confront rhetoric and images on campus that any reasonable person would find repugnant. Trust me, I understand their pain. I've lived it myself.
You don't have the
As a
right to
Jewish
not
kid
be
growing up in the
offended.
Catskill region of New York with relatives who were Holocaust survivors and victims.
Why are
As
they
the
all
former provost at
Jewish?
the University of Virginia watching news coverage
Why are all of them Jewish? Why is like every single Ivy League college president except for one Jewish? Why are all the people testifying here except for the guy from Rutgers who is still a raging leftist? Why are they all Jewish? It just seems like a bizarre coincidence.
of neo-Nazis rioting outside the synagogue in Charlottesville, where my children were called to the Torah. As the chancellor of UCLA, where an art show depicted me with exaggerated facial features that were reminiscent of caricatures of Jews during the Nazi era. As we all know, being an American means sometimes being asked to tolerate offensive and even hateful speech protected by our Constitution. But there are limits. At UCLA, we draw the line when speech crosses into intimidation, threats, and harassment of our community. UCLA has a proud history of peaceful protest. Before October 7th, we successfully navigated campus protests using strategies recommended by the University of California. But on April 25th, as a result of a conflict that spread across universities across the country, a protest sprang up at the center of our campus, testing the limits of our approach. We are part of the University of California system. We followed University of California policy guidelines that directs its 10 campuses to only use law enforcement to remove protesters when absolutely necessary to protect the physical safety of our community. Accordingly, the encampment remained. As the encampment grew to more than 500 protesters, some of whom were not even affiliated with UCLA, it disrupted normal access to some classes. On April 28th, I decided to remove the encampment after violence broke out between opposing demonstrators, and I asked for a security plan to do so. We gave the protesters written notice that the encampment was unlawful on April 30th and instructed them to disperse. But before the necessary police resources could be assembled, assailants attacked the encampment that evening. Tragically, it took several hours before
Pro-Israel
law enforcement could
protesters
quell the
attacked
violence.
the campus.
On May 1st, with the support of the University of California's President Michael Drake, we provided protesters a final opportunity to leave. But when more than 200 protesters refused police orders, law enforcement removed the encampment that night. With the benefit of hindsight, we should have been prepared to immediately remove the encampment if and when the safety of our community was put at risk. We have since taken decisive action. I created a new Office of Campus Safety that reports directly to me. UCLA is conducting a thorough examination of our security processes. The University of California has also engaged independent law enforcement experts to initiate a review of the confrontation, including our planning and security protocols. Finally, we will hold accountable all those engaged in violence or violated our policies. No student should be threatened or excluded based on their beliefs or identity. While we'll always have to strive hard to meet this obligation, we must also maintain our commitment to academic freedom and free speech. The balance is central to UCLA's educational mission. It's not always easy to strike a perfect balance, but that must be our goal.
Oh, I want to get to the
Thank you
questions.
again,
Oh,
and I'm
thank
looking
God.
forward to answering your
Question
questions.
time. Falling asleep here.
Thank you, Chancellor Block. Under Committee Rule 9, we will now question the witnesses under the 5-minute rule. I ask members to keep your questions succinct so the witnesses will have time to answer and not ask a question with few seconds left. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. This question is for all three of the presidents. All of your universities have been hotbeds of pervasive anti-Semitism. Please tell me how many students have your university suspended? How many students have been expelled for
Exactly.
anti-Semitic conduct since October 7th?
Have we harshly punished
President
the
Schill?
students for their thoughts that we
To
don't
my
like?
knowledge, no student has been expelled or suspended. We have ongoing investigations, and there have been terminations of staff.
President Holloway.
We have ongoing
Oh, thank you,
investigations as
Daniel.
well, but
That's
I can
helpful
report that
information.
we've suspended 4 people, and then 19 others are have experienced other levels of disciplinary consequence.
And Chancellor Block.
Yes, we have, I believe, over 100 active investigations right now, evaluating 100 cases since October 7th of both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia.
So very few students have received any kind of disciplinary action from your campuses. Now, President Schill, you said some staff have received disciplinary actions. So I'll ask all 3 of you the same question. How many faculty and staff have you fired or suspended for anti-Semitic conduct or conduct related to the pro-terror encampments since
Pro-terror.
April 17th?
Not anti-war, pro-terror. Okay.
So, Dr. Fox, if I might just correct the premise of your question, the fact that we have not yet suspended or expelled students does not mean that students have not received discipline. There's a wide range of discipline, and discipline has been meted out to many of those students, but we haven't yet suspended or expelled anyone.
Okay.
We have, as I
President
said, I'm
Staff.
sorry,
Staff, how many staff?
I don't have the precise number, but we have had staff terminations.
President Holloway, staff.
And this question was since April 17th, ma'am, is
Yes.
that correct? I don't know that we have suspended anybody from staff at that time, but we do have ongoing disciplinary proceedings.
Chancellor Block.
Ongoing disciplinary proceedings.
Okay. Mr. Schill, in your deal with the self-proclaimed, quote, Northwestern Liberated Zone, you promised to reestablish an advisory committee on investment responsibility this fall. Northwestern Students for Justice in Palestine call this, quote, an important step toward our ultimate goal, divestment from Israel. Will you make clear here now that Northwestern will categorically reject any divestment or academic boycott?
Why? Why are Republicans in Congress demanding that university presidents commit to never, ever, 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 ever divesting in Israel?
Of Israel?
I will make clear that I would never recommend to the Board of Trustees divestment of anything or any academic boycott of Israel.
Okay. Why did you agree to create the perception that you'd do so, which encouraged other universities to cave on this?
That committee is a committee that pre-existed. We had that committee for several years. We had already told the investment committee of the Board of Trustees that we would be starting that committee up again in September. That was done months before the encampment. And so we were going to do that anyway. And there is no intent. That is not a board committee. That is an advisory committee.
Okay.
It has faculty and 2 students, and they're not necessarily from this group.
Thank you. Chancellor Block, numerous videos showed Jewish and other UCLA students being denied access to central parts of campus by encampment members who had set up unauthorized checkpoints. In some cases, the students were questioned on whether they were Zionist. Why did you fail to immediately clear these checkpoints?
I heard accounts, thank you, Chairwoman. I heard accounts of students being blocked, and we issued instructions to our staff to make sure that all walkways were free and the students could freely pass without obstruction. And that was, I believe, I then sent a memo out to the entire community on, I believe, April 30th, instructing that that was intolerable and would not tolerate the blocking of access to parts of campus.
And did it stop as a result of what you said?
I believe it did, but we kept vigilant.
Thank you. Yield back. Mr. Courtney,
Great. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank
You're
you to all the
recognized.
witnesses for being here today. As Mr. Scott pointed out, this is our fifth hearing on this topic, which is perfectly legitimate and appropriate, but I think it's also important to
Hang
remember we're
on.
in Article 1.
I do not have a new rich boyfriend, Josh. I am internet single, and I'm going to be remaining internet single for a while because every time something like this happens, like it ends up not working out well for me. I am internet single. If Josh Randall disavows, wants to come and simp for me, he's allowed to do so, but I am internet single.
Branch of government whose job it is to authorize and appropriate the U.S. Department of Education. The Civil Rights Division of the Department of Education just reported in 2023 they had a record number of complaints for the department. If you go back to 2009, it's tripled in terms of the number of complaints, and a lot of those complaints involve anti-Semitism. But the staffing level at the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Education back in 2009 is larger than it is.
I am not internet poly. I am internet single. There is no internet boyfriend. There's no internet girlfriend. There's no internet nothing. Now we're focusing on the hearings.
Today. And as Mr. Scott pointed out, the budget that the majority reported out last year from the Appropriations Committee for the
I
Civil
am
Rights Division
internet
would have cut their
single.
budget by 25%, which I would characterize as the equivalent of defunding the anti-Semitism police. And again, I think it's our job at some point to focus on the fact that we need to beef up the ranks of that department whose mission it is to investigate and to curtail this type of activity. Madam Chairwoman, I would now like to yield the balance
I don't
of my
like
time
anyone
to Mr.
right now.
Norcross from New Jersey.
Everyone on the internet sucks except for me and people in my audience, and that's it. I don't like anyone right now. We're focusing, but enough talking about this internet dating thing that isn't even real anyway. We're focusing on the hearings.
By the way,
cross
and could I
executive.
have an article admitted to the record on that report?
Without objection.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney, for yielding. President Holloway, great to see you again. For those of you who don't know, Rutgers, the flagship university in New Jersey, home to nearly 100,000 diverse students, faculty plus. Second highest Jewish population, close to 7,000 students, and almost 7,000 Muslim and Arab students. Since October 7th, there's no question that the anti-Semitic
Is this a Democrat
has
or a
increased,
Republican?
at Rutgers. In fact, we had the conversation year over year,
Mr.
it could be as high as 10
Norcross.
times what it was the year before. And you and I have talked about this. In fact, I called you at 6:30 in the morning when I first heard about Rutgers, quote, negotiating to end the encampment. And you picked up the phone, and we've had that continuing conversation. You know, I've spent my life representing workers, protesting. I know it quite well. I'm a firm believer in the First Amendment. But that being said, as I know and
He's a
many
union
others, there are
activist?
rules in all types of protests. on
Socialist.
college campuses, no matter what the reason is. So, and I participated in protests over my lifetime, and when I crossed the line, I paid the consequences. So what I want to dig in today is, what are those lines? When were they crossed, and how you reacted, how Rutgers reacted? Specifically, the encampment at the New Brunswick campus concerned, it was called Voorhees Mall. So when did you first find out that there was a protest at the mall there?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. There was a protest that had been approved in our free speech zone on campus. I think that was a Monday, sir. And then the protesters, and that's a legitimate area, and the protesters then moved down to Voorhees Mall. It's about a 3-block walk, as you might recall, and started setting up an encampment. So I was learning of it as it was happening on that Monday.
Were there any communication with the participants as they created or started the encampment?
Communication from me, sir?
From you, Rutgers police, any communication, or were they just
I see.
allowed
Yes.
to?
No, no, no. For any approved protest, there's a whole process people go through in order to register their space and how they want to proceed. And we have student affairs professionals and university police, the Rutgers University Police Department, RUPD, and security. So they were engaged with those activists from the very beginning and in an ongoing way.
Setting the stage, this was a time of year that most students don't look forward to. It's called finals. Obviously, some of the most difficult times. Were the participants advised that the disruption of finals, in this case, or other activities would not be permitted?
The participants, it was made clear that we were going to allow the encampment and consider it a speech act in the spirit of First
I
Amendment
know,
free
right?
expression. But that encampment could not disrupt university processes, could not bar people from entering buildings, could not be disruptive in terms of excessive noise.
So I only have 10 seconds and I'll be able to finish the line of questioning, but certainly we're going to continue on this time frame so we can get a better understanding. Yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Norcross. Mr. Wahlberg, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank you, Madam Chairman. President Schill, your President's Advisory Committee on Preventing Anti-Semitism and Hate recently disbanded after 7 Jewish members of the committee, including its co-chair and a university trustee, resigned in protest of your caving to the encampment's demands. You and your administration had cited the creation of this committee as proof you are working to counter anti-Semitism. The 3 faculty members you appointed to it had objected to the committee's very creation in a letter that downplayed anti-Semitism and defended the phrase "from the river to the sea." At least 2 of them have supported BDS efforts against Israel. Question:
BDS is
why did you
divestment.
believe it was appropriate to appoint faculty members who have defended and made excuses for anti-Semitism and oppressed and opposed the committee's purported mission of combating anti-Semitism?
Thank you for your question, Congressman Wahlberg. The number one, I'd like to just address the premise of your question. The 7 members who resigned from the committee resigned for 2 reasons. They were unable to reach consensus about what anti-Semitism was.
How could they reach consensus if you have people already having made clear statements that were anti-Semitic, that spoke for BDS and said that "from the river to the sea" is a good statement?
And they resigned because they were not consulted with respect to the negotiations.
Surprise,
they
surprise.
did not resign. I'm sorry.
Let me ask you, will you commit to keeping off those type of members of a committee if you reconstitute this committee as you say you're going to do?
I will be appointing to the task force that we are going to create faculty, staff, administrators who I believe are committed to fighting anti-Semitism and as committed to fighting anti-Semitism as I am.
We'll be watching. President Schill, one of the advisory committee members, Jessica Weniger, has been a leader of academic boycott efforts against Israel. She's also referred to, and I quote, Zionist media and condemned, quote, white liberal dialogue politics, and she signed a petition defending a Palestinian terrorist who murdered 2 Israeli college students in a bombing. Do you acknowledge Professor Weniger as grossly unfit for a committee meant to combat anti-Semitism?
I do not believe in the BDS movement. I am in print against it at my previous university, and I will not be discussing individual faculty members or
So
their
you won't
writing.
say that a person like her, let's forget her name, but a person with her principles will not be on this commission?
I will be appointing people to the committee who are committed to fighting anti-Semitism.
Your record isn't that way. You also appointed a leader of Northwestern's Middle Eastern and North African Student Association to the advisory committee, despite the fact that in the days after October 7th, the MENA Student Association released a statement explicitly supporting the terrorist attack, saying this, and I quote, We resoundingly support Palestinian resistance to over 75 years of Israeli state-sanctioned violence and calling the terrorists killed in the attack martyrs. Do you agree these comments are shocking and beyond the pale?
I will not be commenting, and certainly not commenting on any student that in what students
I think we're hearing
say.
that there's no change going to take place at Northwestern University relative to anti-Semitism.
I
How
actually
could you
respect his
possibly
position. He's
appoint a
like, no,
student
you're
who
not going to get me to
supported
throw people
the
under the
October
bus.
7th terrorist
That takes
attack
balls.
to a committee meant to combat anti-Semitism?
I'm not going to comment on the speech of our students or our faculty or our staff. What I will say is that committee was a committee that wasn't just anti-Semitism. We tried to do something which actually turned
Well,
out
we
to
saw
be
that. We
impossible.
saw that very clearly. Let me
Saying
just
the
finish this.
equivalent of
I
fuck
think we've
you.
heard your response.
He's not
In March,
doing
the
it.
advisory committee hosted University of Michigan professor Juan Cole to speak on Islamophobia and, quote, anti-Arab and anti-Palestinian biases. Fine. But Cole has made numerous anti-Semitic statements, including claiming that Israel, quote, was founded on a formal racial supremacist principle that Jews must rule the state. And that quote
That's literally true. Stating facts is now anti-Semitic.
quote, the only thing that Palestinians and their sympathizers can do to make Zionists happy is to bend over and allow themselves to be royally screwed.
True.
What kind of committee on anti-Semitism invites an anti-Semite like this to speak?
Those are
And with
literally
that,
true statements.
Sadly, I end my questioning. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Ms. Bonamici, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is he suggesting that there is some other group in Israel that is not the Jews that control Israel? And that it's anti-Semitic to imply that the Jews control Israel?
Thank you to the witnesses. Once again, I reiterate that we must stand
Was there
together against
police upon it?
anti-Semitism and do more to combat the harassment of Jewish students. There has been an undeniable rise in hate speech, including
I hate her.
anti-Semitism and Islamophobia
She's awful.
on college campuses across the country. And although I realize that institutions must be held accountable, continuing to schedule repetitive politicized hearings to attack college presidents will not solve the scourge of anti-Semitism.
True.
We need to work with experts on anti-Semitism, legal scholars with expertise in the area, people knowledgeable in the field who could help us determine what the government response can and should be to the increase of anti-Semitism and racial hostility on campuses. Mr. Lawrence, thank you for so clearly articulating the value of higher education and why it's important to promote discussion in ways that respect free speech while keeping students safe. And as I've mentioned in this committee before, the American Jewish Committee, Jewish Federations, the Anti-Defamation League, and others have expertise we can draw on. And because this is also a
let's just
Title
get it all
VI
over to
issue,
the ADL.
let's focus, as Ranking Member Scott and Representative Courtney said, on equipping the Office of Civil Rights with the resources that it needs, rather than cutting their
the
budget,
ADL handle.
as my colleagues
Great
across the aisle
plan.
have proposed. And I also want to note, as I did recently in the subcommittee, that my colleagues across the aisle expressed concern about anti-Semitism on college campuses, but we do not see the same concern when anti-Semitic comments and tropes come from their side of the aisle. For example, just a few days ago, the Truth Social account of Donald Trump included an outrageous video with Nazi-like language about a unified Reich. Did any of my colleagues on this committee call that out and ask the candidate that most of them have endorsed for its removal?
Yes, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who was insanely pro-Israel when he was in office, who has Jared Kushner as a stepson. Donald Trump is anti-Semitic. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah.
It baffles me that some people are opposed to anti-Semitism when it's politically convenient instead of whenever it rears its ugly head. I'm also concerned about any suggestion that the first step to address protests should be to call police. It doesn't work in some cases. And as both Presidents Schill and Holloway and Chancellor Block noted, oftentimes many of the people protesting are not students, further complicating the issue. Northwestern and Rutgers both reached agreements with student protesters to address campus safety concerns while recognizing free speech rights. These agreements involved a shared learning environment that fostered the exchange of ideas between schools and school administration, actions that are directly in line with the university's academic message and mission. So President Schill, in your testimony, you discussed how you identified 3 options to address the encampment on Northwestern's campus. You talked a little bit about why you made the decision you did, and that talking with the students was the best option. But will you explain how the final agreement you reached with student protesters de-escalated activities on campus and how that worked? And did the agreement address rights or protections for Jewish or Israeli
That's a good
students?
question.
Thank you, Congresswoman Bonamici. So we looked at this. What we were experiencing with the encampment was a huge increase in anti-Semitic activity.
How is that defined?
We had things that we hadn't
Thank you,
seen
Victor.
before, like
Victor just brought
complaints
me
of
water.
anti-Semitism jumped up. There was a sign of a Mogen David with a slash on it put on Deering Gate. There was a picture of me with horns and blood, as all of you know. That's an anti-Semitic trope. So we made a decision, and it was making our Jewish students feel unsafe. So we made a decision. Those tents had to
They made a picture of him with horns and blood, and that's anti-Semitic. It could just be saying that you're a warmonger that's supporting war and genocide. It could also be that.
come down. Those tents had to come down. We thought about bringing in the police as an option. That option turned out to be not possible to ensure safety. And my number one objective and mandate, when parents give me their children or lend me their children, I need to keep them safe. And I'm going to do everything I can to keep them safe. And bringing in police, because of the size of our police force and the resources, would have endangered our police, they would have endangered our students, and they would have endangered our student affairs staff. So then we made the decision to talk to our students, to model the behavior that we want to be engaged in, that dialogue rather than force. And we had a de-escalation. The tents came down right after the agreement was struck. The entire protest is now in conformity with university rules. We also there was nothing in that agreement that, just to be responsive to your full question, that specifically addressed the interests of Jewish students other than getting rid of that encampment, which was making our Jewish students feel unsafe. They couldn't walk through Deering Meadow. They couldn't pass Deering Meadow. They were worried about the outsiders on our campus. And we were worried about the outsiders and the threat that they entailed for our students.
I see my time has expired. I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bonamici. Ms.
I have to go to the little socialist room. I'll be right back. Take good notes for me. Let me know if anything happens.
Stefanik, you're recognized.
Oh
for
shit,
5
I
minutes.
can't go. I can't go. Elise Stefanik is up. Okay, I'm holding it until after Elise Stefanik. 5 minute, and then I'm going to the bathroom, but I have to see Elise Stefanik.
And Chill, the ADL released its report card for universities' responses to anti-Semitism, and you're aware that Northwestern was the only university whose grade was downgraded, correct?
Yes, I am aware of that.
And isn't it also true that the Northwestern earned an F for your failure to respond and combat anti-Semitism, and they called for your resignation? Is that correct?
I have great respect for the ADL.
I'm not asking your respect for the ADL. I'm asking, is it a fact that you earned an F and they called for your resignation?
I have great respect for the ADL.
This definitely isn't like, hang
Earned
on.
an F and they called for your resignation.
There is nothing else on this except F written in a giant. It says Northwestern University. There's nothing else written on it. F. Elise Stefanik never disappoints.
Resignation.
I have great respect for the ADL. I am sad that they gave Northwestern
But
an
it's
F.
true. You got an F. Yes. Moving on. Let me tell you why you earned an F. I want to discuss what has been referred to as the Deering Meadows Agreement, your unilateral capitulation to the pro-Hamas anti-Israel, anti-Semitic encampment. But let's talk about what has occurred on this encampment. Isn't it true that a Jewish Northwestern student was assaulted?
So I want to question the premise of your question.
No. I'm asking the questions. You're answering. Wasn't it true?
My answer is not a capitulation.
I'm asking the question. You're required to answer. Isn't it true that a Jewish Northwestern student was assaulted?
There are allegations that a Jewish student was assaulted. We are investigating those allegations.
Isn't it true that a Jewish student was verbally harassed and stalked to Hillel?
There are allegations of that sort, and we are investigating them.
Isn't it true that a Jewish student wearing a yarmulke was spat on?
All of these are allegations that are being investigated.
How long are these investigations going to occur?
Well, if you remember, the encampment was up.
Aren't Christians spit on in Israel? Am I making that up? Because Elise Stefanik just went to Israel and gave a speech in front of Israel's, I guess, I like the Knesset, is that what it is? Like, she gave a speech saying the United States has to unquestioningly support anything Israel wants. But am I wrong in saying that Christians are literally spit on when they go to Israel? Am I making that up? So why doesn't Elise Stefanik care about that?
Just a few weeks ago. So we believe at Northwestern in due process.
Yeah,
we
I'm right.
believe in investigations. We believe.
So when are the investigations going to be finalized?
I'm not going to be able to tell you that. They'll be finalized when
they'll be finalized when they're done, Elise.
Conduct Office and the Title VI Office, which are well on this issue.
This is why you've earned an F. Isn't it true that a Jewish student was told to, quote, go back to Germany and get gassed, end quote?
I've heard that alleged. Again, it is being investigated. We will investigate any claim of discrimination or harassment.
But it is a fact. You said that there have been 0 suspensions, 0 expulsions.
Thus far, with lots of investigations on their way.
You said something that was very important. You said we did not give in to demands, but the commitments we made as part of the Deering Meadows Agreement. You said the word commitments. Let me talk about those commitments. One of those commitments was funding 2 visiting Palestinian faculty for 2 years. Is that true?
This is part of a program that we have had. We have used it with Afghanistan, Ukraine. It's for war-torn
But isn't it true? I'm asking you. Okay. The other one is you will fund the full cost for 5 Palestinian undergrads.
That is also part of the program sponsored by our Buffett Institute. It is not a new program. It exists for people whose education and research has been interrupted.
It was announced as part of the Deering Meadows Agreement. Is that correct?
It was a goal set forth in the Deering Meadow Agreement. It will also include people from Israel.
Who was consulted when you embarked on the Deering Meadows Agreement?
So what he's saying is there is an existing program on Northwestern's campus that funds faculty and students from war-torn countries to come and study at Northwestern. And they've used this with other countries before. And part of the student demands was that this existing program now be used to fund Palestinian professors and Palestinian students, like a very small amount, to come and study and work at Northwestern. Does anyone see any problem with this? Why is Elise Stefanik having a goddamn conniption over the fact that there was an existing program that targets people in war-torn countries that brings them to campus to fund 2 professors and 5 students?
Was the President's Advisory Committee on Preventing Anti-Semitism
giving Palestinian students scholarships is now anti-Semitic?
And hate consulted?
That was not within the purview of the Anti-Semitism
so they were not
and other
consulted.
Forms of hate committee.
Was Northwestern's Board of Trustees consulted?
The chair of our board was consulted.
But not the entire Board of Trustees.
Our Board of Trustees has over 120 members.
And isn't it a fact that members of the Board of Trustees expressed dissatisfaction with your failure to consult them?
There's been some members of our Board of Trustees who have expressed dissatisfaction that they were not part of the decision-making.
Did you consult with the General Counsel of Northwestern or an outside counsel on the Deering Meadows Agreement before it was agreed to?
Yes.
Hang on. Got a super chat from Tayton. How long until you can't fund Christian scholarship because it's anti-Semitism? Yeah, I mean, listen, we already know that Candace Owens, like Andrew Klavan confirmed it. We saw the clip yesterday. Candace Owens 100% got fired from the Daily Wire for saying Christ is king. Like, I'm not a Christian. I actually don't really care, but like, how long until this is applied that way?
Are you aware that board members asked you this question and you said that you had not
Not the
consulted?
outside counsel. The general counsel of the
Thank you, Nick.
university was part of my team managing this problem.
Did you consult with two members of the advisory committee that I referenced previously, the anti-Israel professor Jessica Winiger and the Kellogg professor Noor Katili? Were they consulted on the Deering Meadows Agreement?
I consulted with several members, including them, but also including the Hillel director and also including the
Let's
chair
talk about
of
the Hillel
committee.
director consultation. Isn't it true that you asked the Hillel director whether it was possible to hire an anti-Zionist Hillel, head of Hillel, rabbi?
I did not. I absolutely did not. I would never hire anyone based upon their views of being Zionist or anti-Zionist. That is not what I do. That's not what a
That's
great
not according to the
university does.
whistleblowers that have come forward to this committee.
Ms.
I can't say
Stefanik, your
who has
time
talked
has
to you or not
expired.
talked to you, but I can tell you
I can assure you
the
many
truth.
people have spoke to this committee.
Thank you.
Elise Stefanik is part of the Gnostic sex cult. She has hidden knowledge about what has gone on in Northwestern's campus, and maybe she'll show receipts and maybe she won't. I guess we'll see. All right. I need to go to the little socialist room. I'll be right back. Take good notes. Let me know if anything happens.
Mr. Chicano, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I'll begin with a few questions for the current presidents. And if you would please just answer with a yes or no if possible. My first question is, should colleges and universities be places where the right to free speech and free exchange of ideas is protected? President Schill.
Yes.
Mr. Holloway.
Yes, sir.
Chancellor Block.
Yes, sir.
At the same time, do colleges and universities have an obligation to keep students safe from harm and ensure that they're able to study and attend class without impediment? President Schill.
Absolutely.
President Holloway.
Yes, sir.
Chancellor Block.
Yes, sir.
Have your schools taken substantive steps to eliminate discrimination, including anti-Semitism, as defined by Title VI? President Schill.
Yes, but we need to do more.
Got it. President Holloway.
I agree with Mr. Schill in the same way, yes, but we are always a work in progress. We're committed to it.
Chancellor Block.
I would say the same. We've made progress. We have programs. We need to do more.
Great. The University of California, Riverside, which is in my district, was the first school in the UC system to reach a peaceful resolution with student protesters. Students had set up an encampment on Monday, April 29th, and following negotiations between college administration and the leadership of the protest, the encampment was dissolved peacefully within a week without a single arrest. Chancellor Kim Wilcox announced the terms of the agreement in a letter to the UCR community. Classes and final exams continued, and the commencement ceremony will be in just a couple of days. My university is leading by example, but my Republican colleagues are characterizing any agreement made between university administrators and student protesters as quote unquote conceding to the mob. Mr. Lawrence, in your experience as the former president of Brandeis University, what are the hazards of immediately punishing campus protesters rather than opening a dialogue between administrators and students?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. There are two main concerns here. One, we always have to remember that even in these tense moments on campuses, we are an educative institution. We are educators. So the goal is to engage with students to the extent possible as part of the education process of all of the issues that are involved. Second, and regarding safety, you're always looking to try to find ways to de-escalate conflict to the extent possible. Understand that sometimes that's not going to be possible, and sometimes there are consequences that have to be pursued down the road. But you don't start that way. You start trying to de-escalate the conflict, and in my experience, reaching out to the students, to all of the stakeholders, and trying to build dialogue first with the administration and the students, and then among and between the students is the best way to reduce conflict.
So, Dr. Schill, was the encampment at Northwestern dismantled peacefully?
Yes, it was.
Were there any arrests?
There were no arrests needed.
And Dr. Holloway, the same question. Was Rutgers encampment dismantled peacefully?
Yes, it was, sir.
Were there any arrests?
No, there were not.
And Dr. Schill, did the agreement Northwestern came to with the encamped students did that agreement remove any rights or protections for Jewish or Israeli students?
No, it actually gave them the ability to feel safe on campus because it was no longer there.
And Dr. Holloway, did Rutgers agreement remove any rights or protections for those students?
No, sir, there is no diminution of rights and protections for Jewish students.
And I will say, looking at the UCR agreement, I do not see that any rights were abridged or removed for Jewish or Israeli students either. Chancellor Block, UCLA is an unfortunate contrast to what happened at Rutgers and Northwestern. Tensions exploded into an incident that lasted several days, led to arrests of many, maybe hundreds of arrests, and put students in the hospital. In hindsight, could you or your administration have done anything differently to prevent things? As Mr. Lawrence said, sometimes it's not possible, but in hindsight, might there have been another approach?
Thank you for your question. Always we're going to review all of our incidents and to see whether there was another pathway. We tried very hard to find an off-ramp for student protesters so they could leave the encampment. Wasn't to be. Safety became an issue for the whole community, and we had to ask all the encampment members to leave the encampment.
Can you tell me just how much time was actually spent negotiating with the students or dialoguing? I mean, was that possible?
Attempt was made first through intermediaries, through faculty, and then eventually our executive vice chancellor and provost actually sat in the encampment and discussed potential solutions, and was unsuccessful. So there was a real attempt for discussion, but unfortunately was not successful.
Well, thank you. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tucano. Mr. Allen, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And first, I'd like to ask each one of you, the answer of the day is it's under investigation. What are these students doing while they're being investigated? Are they still attending classes? Are they still demonstrating? Are they still involved in this intolerable behavior on campus?
This is the guy.
Real quickly.
This is the guy that during the Columbia hearing, he said if Columbia didn't support Israel, they would be cursed by God.
Yeah, what are you? Are they dismissed from the university until the investigation is complete? Tell me what's going on there, Dr. Schill.
I can't say for specific students what they're doing, but we are still in session. We begin.
Okay, so they're still attending classes, and we don't know if they're still involved in protest and everything else. Dr. Holloway, what about your university?
We had a very successful and quiet commencement had a very successful and quiet commencement 2 weeks ago, and students who are under disciplinary review are not on our campus. There's no protest at this time.
Dr. Holloway, what are you doing to those students who are under investigation?
Was that to me, sir? Or
no? I can't see the camera. Dr. Block, Chancellor Block.
So during this period of time, students are still attending classes. I should emphasize there is no encampment, and there have been no demonstrations that are problematic.
Dr. Block, Section 185 of the California Penal Code outlaws wearing a mask to evade identification and committing a public offense. Why have you not banned the wearing of masks on your campus in accordance with California law?
We're still apparently are allowed to wear masks for COVID protection, and students continue to wear them. And
those are medical masks.
Medical masks.
Right. These are not medical masks.
They are medical masks, actually. They are wearing medical masks.
So you're allowing this behavior?
We've allowed masks on campus, although we have a policy that should be unmasked. But during the time of COVID, we allowed medical masking, and we've continued to allow that.
I'll yield to Ms. Stefanik the remainder of my time.
Yeah. First, they wanted
President
to make masks
Schill, you
mandatory.
talked
Now they
about,
want to
you
ban
said there's
them.
been a wide range of discipline after testifying. There have been 0 suspensions, 0 expulsions, and you said discipline has been meted.
Well, and most of those instructions also had that in a higher priority than covering their identity, it said for the collective care of the community because they are actually still afraid of COVID. Socialists do believe there's still a COVID pandemic. Socialists do require masks at their private events. So let's not forget that.
Out. How has discipline been meted out?
Discipline has run the gamut. That is the discipline that's already completed. Run the gamut from meetings with student affairs staff at the very lowest level of severity up to disciplinary probation, which means if there is another offense, students will be expelled or suspended.
And you testified when I asked about the Deering Meadows Agreement with the visiting Palestinian faculty members. Isn't it true that the university committed to fundraise above and beyond its current commitment as part of the Deering Meadows Agreement?
I did not commit. I don't know.
They're all Jewish,
who told you that?
except for the
Well,
Rutgers
I'm reading
side.
it from the statement put out by the university that says, quote, the university commits to fundraise to sustain this program beyond this current commitment, end quote. I'm reading your words put out by your office.
That is a program that is not just about the Middle East. That is a program that is
She's
about,
still going on
that
about
is about
this.
war-torn areas all across this world.
But
so
isn't
Ukraine,
it a
for
fact,
example, would be
isn't
included.
it a fact that that was part of the agreement to increase the commitment to that?
I don't think the agreement increased the commitment.
It did. I'm reading it for you. You put this out from your office. Quote, the university commits to fundraise to sustain this program beyond this current commitment. Is that no longer part of the Deering Meadows Agreement?
When I hear beyond this commitment,
I'm reading what your office put out.
So Elise Stefanik is suggesting that Northwestern is going to fundraise, which means soliciting voluntary private donations that are not funded by the state, that are not funded by tuition, that are private individuals, probably very rich individuals, saying, I want to donate to this program to bring in faculty and students from war-torn countries and applying it specifically to Palestine. A privately funded fucking program is now anti-Semitic. Why do we care about this if it's not taxpayer funded? If he is fundraising for it, it is by very definition not taxpayer funded. It is funded by people who have giant wallets, and they're opening those wallets and they're saying, here, take this money to fund this program. Why do we care about this?
Are you asking me to interpret what my
No,
office
I'm asking
put out,
you,
or are
isn't
you
that the
just
fact?
reading it?
What does beyond this current commitment mean?
What I read that to be is beyond this current commitment, the rest of the world and over time.
That's not, it's specifically focused on the Palestinian faculty members. Let me ask you
So
this.
what?
We're also going to be including Israeli faculty members.
It doesn't say that
and
in the
Israeli-
commitment. Why didn't you include Israeli faculty members when you put out the Deering Meadows Agreement?
Because the Deering Meadows Agreement, which actually I never called it that, but the Deering Meadows Agreement
Yes.
was just a framework of an agreement.
Elise Stefanik now wants to regulate private donations.
That was reached with students at 4 o'clock in the morning.
At the pro-Hamas encampment.
If you would like to see the entire program, go on our website and that will explain it to you and you will see.
No, I'm
it doesn't
asking you about
violate
what the
Title
university
VI.
put out. There is no mention of Israeli students or Israeli faculty.
So
Isn't
what?
that the case?
In the agreement that we reached, that there wasn't Israeli students there or Jewish
Because
students
they weren't
there.
consulted. Isn't that the fact?
So
Jewish and
what?
Israeli students were not consulted.
Jewish and Israeli students were not consulted
Exactly.
with respect to
Yield
the
back.
agreement.
Exactly.
And it would
Yield
have been
back.
impractical to do that,
What a
Representative
cunt.
Stefanik, with all respect.
I hate her.
Dr. Adams, you're recognized.
She needs to
for
go
5
away.
minutes.
Elise Stefanik is like, I'm fundraising from the Jews today. Let me get all the Jews to open their sweet wallets to fund my next camp. That's what she's doing. Elise Stefanik is fundraising right now. Everyone understands that, right? That's why Elise Stefanik is so pissed off that a president at a private college is soliciting private voluntary donations to fund a program for Palestinian students and professors to come to Northwestern that are not taxpayer funded at all. But Elise Stefanik now wants to regulate all private donations because she's fundraising.
I'm sorry. Mr. Norcross, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Wait,
Pick up where we left off. And
Candace Owens, holy shit. I mean, it's true. Factually true. Oh, I'm loving this Candace Owens arc. She's still a narcissist. Never trust Candace Owens, but we can enjoy it and be entertained by it.
the premise behind this is we were talking about the encampments or the beginning of protest. You know, what were those lines? When were they crossed and how you reacted? So just to bring back context and certainly understanding that, you know, since that time you have, and I certainly had met with students, instructional staff, quite frankly, the union of the professors. But one of the issues that comes up and they're bringing to my attention is when the Rutgers Students for Justice in Palestine they began to issue fuck finals call, which right in the middle of finals for an emergency protest at 7 a.m. on the 2nd. So obviously this is a heightened from what you suggested was a peaceful protest to something that's going to interfere with the ability of students to either attend their finals, feel threatened. Why didn't you order an immediate removal of the encampments once you learned that the participants were going to try to disrupt the finals?
Thank you for the question. On the day of, I woke up probably around 6:15, and that's when I discovered the Instagram post that you're referencing, sent out by SJP. Within minutes, I was in touch with my leadership team, and I would say roughly by 6:30, we were all on a Zoom talking about the situation. It was at that time that I said that the encampment had to go down. This is a wild violation of, across the line, to use your language, sir, a wild violation. And we decided then to take the encampment down. In order to do so, in talking with the chief of police at Rutgers, he said that the process would take a few hours to make sure there were a sufficient number of police there that it could be done safely.
So I assume you were in consultation. This is the Rutgers chief of police. Did you consult with your board of governors or with lawyers that you have on staff or others?
Our general counsel was in that group that I was referencing. The chief of police was dialed in at all times. We were engaged with him directly. The board of governors, I was in touch with the chair and vice chair, not at 6:30 in the morning, but at a reasonable hour for them to give them a heads up as to what was happening.
But is this when the negotiations started with the protesters?
The protesters, I discovered that they had sent in a list, I think on Tuesday, sir. This was Thursday that I'm talking about. Sent in a list on Tuesday. And then the chancellor of New Brunswick, who runs that campus on a daily basis, she and my chief of staff talked with 4 representative students on Wednesday. And then, the agreement, this is the day before finals began. And the agreement was made then that we will be happy to talk with you, but this encampment cannot be disruptive. It cannot block access. It can't be raising noise. It needs to be silent because we have final exams tomorrow. They agreed to that. And then the next morning we discovered that they had broken that agreement.
So the negotiations then were taking place while the encampment was still there. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, yes.
So knowing that and I'll call it the agreement that was reached with the protesters, after that, why did it take so long to remove the encampment, even after the deal was done?
The students asked for another meeting on Thursday morning. That's when they learned that I'd already given the order to take the encampment down. And they had hoped that we could have some further conversation on different points. I'm like, well, if you want to talk anything, you've got to agree to have this encampment down. We extended the timeline to 4 o'clock, and that was a matter of public safety, sir. In talking with regular engagement with the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey, when we sent out a request for mutual aid, they needed more time to make sure there were proper police there, proper amount of police. We had 125 police mustered, ready to go by early afternoon.
I think I heard you say you spoke with the Attorney General,
Yes, sir.
and why was he brought into this?
As I discovered, sir, that when I did not know it at the time, when police asked for mutual aid in the state of New Jersey and they asked for more assistance, that request ultimately lands with the Attorney General's office, sir.
And what was his reaction or suggestion that you do? Take it down immediately, wait, go?
He wanted to make sure that we had given, since we had allowed them to be there as a speech act, he wanted to make sure we would give them proper notice to that they were now in trespass, and then allow time to disperse.
So the Attorney General said, wait till we tell them
Yes,
they're
that's
trespassing?
what he's saying.
Okay, I yield back to balance of my time. Thank you.
I'm going to say to the members, when I start hitting the gavel, I want to be respectful to the witnesses answering questions. But if I hit the gavel, no more questions, okay? Thank you. Mr. Banks, you're recognized.
President
for 5
Schill, have you had
minutes.
any conversations over the last year about leaving the Big Ten Conference?
No. Leaving the Big Ten
conversations?
Conference?
No consideration, no
No, we're proud to
conversations?
be in the Big Ten Conference. We're proud of our football team, and we're proud of being the charter
So you're
member of the Big
fully
Ten.
committed to remaining in the Big Ten
Who
Conference?
cares?
We are fully committed to remaining in the Big Ten Conference.
Last year, you fired the popular football coach, Coach Fitzgerald,
Seriously?
after allegations of hazing in the locker room. You hired a law firm. You spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. That law firm came back with a recommendation to give a 2-week suspension of the football coach because there was no credible evidence that he was aware at all of the harassment or the hazing allegations in the locker room. You issued that 2-week suspension, correct?
I
then you-
feel like this is a matter, as you know, former Coach Fitz is suing us, and you're asking for facts, and your premise is inaccurate, but I don't think...
Don't accuse me of that.
Well,
That's
it's
outrageous.
wrong what you
Because let me
just
get
said.
to my point.
Okay.
Yes, make your
Because I
point.
think your performance
What
here
does
has
this have
been
to do
very
with
embarrassing to
anything?
your school. You after 72
Is this a
hours,
Republican or a
you gave him a
Democrat?
2-week suspension.
This is a Republican.
And then you received a lot of backlash from the left-wing mob, including a letter from 6 professors who attacked you and said that wasn't good enough. By the way, 3 of those professors were also, they also attacked you later for creating the Committee on Antisemitism and Hate. And you responded to that left-wing backlash as well. So then you fired the popular football coach 72 hours later after you originally gave him a 2-week suspension. Here's what's relevant, Mr. President. You said that the decision to originally suspend Coach Fitzpatrick was mine and mine alone, as is the decision to part ways with him. So it was your decision alone. Let me ask you about Stephen Thrasher, who's one of the goons in the photo behind me. He's a professor of journalism at Northwestern. He and several of your faculty members locked arms. They scuffled with police officers, blocked the police officers on your campus from doing their job. Do they continue to teach students at Northwestern University after this embarrassing incident?
So I will not comment on individual faculty members
President,
nor
is
on matters.
it your decision and your decision alone to allow those professors to continue to teach students on your campus?
We believe in due process at at Northwestern University.
You believe in due
We will
process
follow-
except for the decision that you made about Coach Fitzgerald.
He
we
had due
followed
process.
the contract.
Had
That
your
He
was
literally
you
had due
needed
process.
We had an investigation, but I'm not going to go on and on about that.
Is it okay for faculty members at Northwestern University to scuffle with police officers, to lock arms and prevent police officers from doing their job? You said in your opening statements that this encampment was responsible for anti-Semitic behavior that made Jewish students feel unsafe to go to class. Is it okay for faculty members? Is it okay? Do they get away with that at Northwestern University?
I am not going to comment on ongoing investigations and faculty personnel matters. There is a rule at the university that is confidential.
That those faculty members would continue to have a job. Thrasher, by the way, is something of a professional prognosticator. In fact, he went to Columbia University to participate in their encampment, and you pay his bills. You're responsible for Stephen Thrasher's activities, which is really.
Wait. This guy is actually saying the college president is responsible for what an individual faculty member chooses to do in his free time with his money. Oh my God. What does it say to you guys that Republicans in Congress want university presidents to regulate the private life and the private spending of their employees? Does that sound okay to you? Would you be okay if your boss came to you and said, you are not allowed to do what you want this weekend because I pay your salary, and therefore if you do something that I don't agree with, that is going against me, even though it's your free time and it's your salary based on the agreed upon contract that we have. But I'm going to say that your acceptance of working here gives me the right to dictate to you what you do in your free time with your money. That's literally what they're saying. Now, you might not like what the professor did. That's fine. But you have to think about it in terms of like a bigger picture precedent.
Crazy. Let me ask you this. Are the Houthis and is Hamas a terrorist organization?
Everything I know suggested that Hamas is a terrorist organization.
Is it okay for professors or faculty members at Northwestern University to praise Hamas or the Houthis? Hamas, by the way, responsible for the attacks on October 7 that killed over 1,000 Jews and Israelis.
What? What? For what? What happened? You can't just come in and drop that in here and not give us any context. What the fuck happened?
A very terrible,
Can
dark
someone
day
find out what happened if that's
in
true?
Israel. Is it okay for your faculty members to praise Hamas and the Houthis?
And
I guess I'm not done covering the Nick Rekieta stuff yet. Seriously? Nick Rekieta got a... Seriously? Yo! Okay, we need to investigate this. Thank you, Benny. I appreciate the breaking news update. We're going to still watch this, though.
Are you saying okay, meaning is it something that I would do, or are you saying okay?
Do you allow your professors and your faculty members to do that?
Our professors and our faculty members have all of the rights of free speech that
I'd like to submit these statements for the record, Madam Chair, of faculty members at Northwestern who have praised Hamas and the Houthis. And by the way, is it okay for...
I do not go on that website ever. And so if it's only on Kiwi Farms, I'm not going on there. But tell me where else to look. Anything other than Kiwi Farms. I'm not inflicting that level of toxicity on myself.
Faculty members, teachers to tell their students to go to the encampments or coerce them, push them toward that type of political behavior, to go participate and lock arms with the encampments and maybe tie their grades to that or make them feel like that's something that they should participate with.
May I answer, Chair?
You may answer.
Thank you. Our faculty...
Wait, yo. I think I just found it. Hang on. Hang on one sec. Breaking news update. We'll go back to the testimony in a second. Yeah, I listened. No, well, I mean, that was last night, though, Rottweiler. If he just got arrested, then that's a different thing. So, new update. This is 28 minutes ago from this random person on the internet. New update to my question. Is jerking off on a live stream and then getting arrested considered rock bottom? Looks like Ricada is definitely there. There he is. That, holy shit. I need a better image of this. Hang on. Let me see if I can get this. Does it come up bigger? Yes, it does. Hang on. Holy shit. Drugs, 5th degree possession of ammo, any firearms, wow. Hang on, I'll make it bigger. That's Nick Ricada and his wife. Oh, God. And April was arrested as well. There's another image here. Hang on. I don't know. I don't see who's on this one that should be worried about. Is she on this one? Is her real name actually April? Does she have a different name? I don't see her on this one. I only see Nick Ricada and his wife. All right. All right, all right. All right, all right, all right. Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that. Thank you for the update. I hope he's okay. Genuinely. Hang on, we'll go back to our... She was arrested separately, so April was arrested separately? Wow, bro. Wow. All right, thank you, Benny.
Members, no one at our school may engage in discriminatory, harassing, or intimidating behavior.
Madam Chair, I want to submit this for the record as well, these comments. $4 billion have gone to your university. We shouldn't give you another taxpayer dollar for the joke that your university has become under your leadership.
Expired without objection.
Oh, yep, I see April now, too. April was also arrested for drug
Ms.
possession.
Paul, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Free speech and the right to protest are foundational to our democracy, and upholding these rights without allowing them to be twisted into weapons of hate is no easy task. And nowhere, perhaps, is it more difficult than on college campuses, places that help students to think, to engage, to broaden their mindsets, and to express their ideas without violence or intimidation. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-AAPI hate, LGBTQIA hate, and indeed all forms of hatred have no place in our society, including on college campuses. The history of protest on college campuses is mirrored in today's history. In today's protests, as college administrators, protecting all of your students and allowing your campuses to remain as communities of free debate is your responsibility. So instead of using these hearings for political bullying purposes, which is what the majority seems to do, and if you want to be embarrassed about something, perhaps be embarrassed about the fact that this majority has not been able to govern in this cycle without being saved by Democrats. I, for one, am interested in hearing and learning about what successful negotiation and de-escalation looks like in the context of protecting students and free speech. Mr. Schill, I'm a proud MBA graduate from the Kellogg School at Northwestern University. In fact, many of my courses were about negotiation and mediation. And you have described college presidents as being between a rock and a hard place in a recent op-ed, and certainly we see that. I agree completely with your eloquent comments on the need to fight the scourge of anti-Semitism on our campuses and everywhere, and I appreciate your own lived experience and your work to do that. You did not mention other forms of hate that have also arisen against Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim students on your campus. Do you have the same level of commitment to fight that kind of hate against those students? And can you tell me what efforts you are taking to address safety concerns for those communities?
Absolutely. Any form of hate, any form of discrimination or harassment based upon Title VI or other rules at the university, we will investigate any complaints, and we have gotten complaints that sound in Islamophobia, and we will investigate them. We will also protect all of our students, whether on campus or off campus, and we will connect and communicate. I had a dinner for 45 Jewish kids, and I asked them about what they needed. I had a dinner for...
Now, this is from Ethan Ralph, so take this with a grain of salt. Rakeda and wife facing 5 years on gun charges and 5 years on drug charges. April is only facing 5 years for drugs. Holy, I didn't think this was that serious. Holy shit. Wow. Yeah, he's got all the statutes here in this tweet. Oh my God. A person named in Subdivision 1, Clause 1, who possesses ammunition or a pistol or semi-automatic military-style assault weapon in violation of that clause is guilty of a felony and may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 5 years or a payment of a fine of not more than $10,000 or both. Wow. A person convicted under the, and this is the drug one, a person convicted under the previous Subdivision 2 who has not been previously convicted of a violation of this chapter, a similar offense in another jurisdiction, is guilty of a gross misdemeanor. 1, if the amount of the controlled substance possessed other than heroin is less than 0.25 grams or blah, 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 where's the punishment? May be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 5 years and a fine of $10,000. Wow. I wonder how they got arrested. Did the police just... I wonder if there was some sort of like... Was there some sort of like child endangerment call made to like Child Protective Services or something because of the live stream? And then the police just showed up at their house and they hadn't gotten rid of the drugs yet? Oh my God. Well, no, if that was true, they wouldn't have gotten the wife too, and they got his wife too. So I just want to say, for everyone that has ever called me the craziest person on the internet, do you know what I haven't done on the internet? I haven't had someone go down on me that is someone other than my husband under the desk on a live stream, get caught, and then the next day or 2 days later get arrested for drug possession and facing a felony to which I could go to jail for 5 years for. I've never done that. Wow. Holy shit. Okay, let's just get back to the testimony. This is going to take a minute to process.
Islamic students and ask them what they needed. We are a university. These are all of our students. Everyone is part of our community. And I owe an obligation. My number one obligation is public safety and is their safety. Because if you don't feel safe, you cannot learn. And that's what Northwestern does better than any other university. As you know, because you're an alumna, it teaches and it does research and it creates an environment for learning.
Thank you. You commented some on this, but I wanted to know if you had more to say about the options and the outcomes that you considered before choosing negotiation. You were actually successful in ending your college's encampment by peacefully negotiating with the protesters. Did you have anything you wanted to add about what you were considering as you decided to take that course of negotiation?
So, as I said, we had to get the encampment down. We needed to, the police solution was not, number one, not going to be available to us to keep people safe, but also may not be the wise solution, as we've seen at some other universities around the country. So we found, and we were fortunate to have students who were willing to negotiate and were willing to give up their demands that they came into us for. Their number one demand was divestment. We said no. We said absolutely not. We said nothing that singles out Israel. And then we said, let's think about what will make the university stronger, what will be important for your community. And then we came to this agreement over time, hearing what their needs are. And I would do that. I would listen to the needs of any community. And I have to say, most of these things, we had already been in communication with our Muslim students. For example, the House for Muslim Students and MENA students.
Yeah, I wonder if Mark Rendaz is like, fuck you, bro, I'm out.
For a year, they had no place to pray. They had no place to eat and celebrate Ramadan. So that was something that we accord to our Jewish students, to our Catholic students, to our Lutheran students. So we want to meet the needs of our students where they are. And that's what the agreement ended up being.
I really appreciate your focus on negotiation and a peaceful resolution and protecting all students. Thank you, President Schill. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Jayapal. Mr. Owens, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me just start off by saying that courage and leadership finds itself in the moment. And I must say, we, as a nation, we're seeing that it was not available. We did not see that in these college campuses. What I think we were looking for was strength, fairness to all, including our Jewish students, wisdom, and the recognition that hatred cannot be negotiated with. I'm really curious. I'm trying to understand how you have negotiations. And by the way, President Shield, would you have the same patience, the same strategy?
Why is there a giant check?
If these were KKK white supremacists that were trying to negotiate that was actually attacking and intimidating Black people, would you have the same patience with that? What'd you do?
Representative Owens, thank you for the question. I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals like that.
No. This
happened.
is how you deal with hatred. I'm trying to give you a kind of understanding that we're talking about Jewish students. If it was Black students against KKK instead of pro-Hamas, would you deal with them the same exact way as you dealt with these two students?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals.
All right, so the answer is no. Okay, let's move on. I'll just say this: it's striking that you decided to negotiate a sweetheart deal with pro-Hamas students and professors who deny
they have
October
a novelty
7th.
Check.
Either deny it, they celebrate it, or they simply don't care. I looked at that as pure evil. Mr. Shield, now, how much money has Northwestern University received from Qatar sources, including Qatar-connected entities at the Qatar Foundation?
The amount that we have received from the Qatar Foundation to fund our campus in Qatar, all of the resources that we have gotten, there's been a lot.
It doesn't take, I'm looking for short answers. I only have about 3 minutes
Okay,
left, please, okay? So how much?
I don't have the
Let's
dollar
say
number. You
between
have a
500
check that says.
Oh, yeah. Let's say between 500 and
You have a
7
check that
million,
says
100
that
million,
amount.
okay?
Every dollar has gone to the operation of the campus or the
All right,
management of the campus.
Would you mind doing me? We'd like to have a complete transparent accounting to just how much exactly is coming from this. Now, are you aware this is the same Qatar government that has partnered with the currently harbors the leaders of Hamas and estimated to have given the terrorist organization of Hamas about $1.8 billion? Are you aware of that? Qatar.
They are harboring those leaders with the
Okay, are you
knowledge
aware
and
that they? I'm
the
just
United
asking a
States
question. Yes or
government
no?
supports
Please, yes or no?
that and has
Are you aware
supported that.
1.8 billion has been given to
Pardon
Hamas
me?
from Qatar?
Pardon me?
Are you aware that terrorists have given that Qatar has given the terrorists $1.8 billion to Hamas?
This is not my area of
all right, you're not aware.
expertise.
Okay. Are you aware that the Iranian officials travel in and out of Doha to meet with Hamas?
This is not in my area of
Okay.
expertise.
Do you think, if this was true, do you think it'd be a good idea for the University of Northwestern to partner with a government that harbors terrorist Hamas and Iranian operatives who fund terrorism? Yes or no? Just yes
I'm
or no.
not going to engage in yes or
Okay,
no
so
answers.
obviously you don't have a problem with that. Northwestern's School of Journalism is a formal
I really am
partnership with.
offended
I'm
by
sorry,
you
my
telling me
time,
what my views are.
A formal partnership with the Qatar media outlet Al Jazeera. Did you know that?
I'm sorry?
Did you know that your Northwestern School of Journalism is a formal partnership with Al Jazeera?
I, in fact, just found out about that last
Okay,
week.
well, let me tell you, let me make you aware of it then, because Al Jazeera, because of their pro-Hamas reporting, the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, asked the Qatar Prime Minister to tone down Al Jazeera's anti-Israel incitement. Also, it was Israel, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt that had blocked Al Jazeera because of their pro-Hamas mouthpiece. My understanding is that you have a contract with the Qatar Foundation that expires at the end of 2028 academic year, which now that you know about Qatar, would you be willing to, are you going to still renew that contract?
The review of that contract is being done by the provost office. And
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I just finish
I'm
the
sorry.
These are really short questions. Knowing that Al Jazeera is a mouthpiece for Hamas, are you willing to end that partnership?
The decision with respect to the Qatar campus is ultimately the Board of Trustees. And
By the way,
I actually am concerned by
what he's actually saying is that Israel didn't like the coverage that Al Jazeera was giving them. And so Israel banned Al Jazeera from the country. And on the basis of Israel not liking the coverage of Al Jazeera, the Owens is now demanding that the president of Northwestern also cut ties with Al Jazeera, because if Israel doesn't like Al Jazeera, then everyone has to hate Al Jazeera. I don't have an opinion on them either way. I'm just saying that that's what's playing out.
By the agreement that you're talking about with Al
Well, you should
Jazeera,
be.
and we are going to look into it.
Yeah, okay. This is an issue that I'm thankful we're pulling the curtains back, because this is not just beginning now. Obviously, it's been going on a long, long time. We're going to make sure we keep follow up on this. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Owens, your time has expired. Mrs. Manning, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Clearly, none of you were prepared for what happened on your campuses after October 7th. And I have spoken with Jewish students, faculty members, alumni who have described countless horrifying and relentless incidents of harassment, intimidation, the use of Jewish tropes, the putting up of leaflets and the tearing down of hostage posters, the isolation of Jewish student groups, of Jewish students rather, forcing them to leave official student groups, from student government to dance troops. Students were unable to get to class. They were afraid to go to the dining rooms. They could not study. They had classes and exams canceled. What has been described to me has been nothing short of the normalization of anti-Semitism on your campuses. But this normalization
They had classes
of
canceled?
anti-Semitism
It must be
did not
anti-Semitism.
start
Oh
on
no,
October
they had
7th.
classes canceled?
It predated that date
Jesus
by
Christ.
many years, and it reflects a failure to take anti-Semitism seriously, a failure to treat anti-Semitism the same way you would treat any other kind of discrimination. It has been fostered by years of teaching a one-sided anti-Israel view by many of your professors, and by a demonization of Zionism, which is the centuries-old quest by the Jewish people to return to their ancestral homeland and control their own destiny. President Schill, why hasn't Northwestern taken serious steps to address the normalization of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionist teachings on your campus?
You must
long
indoctrinate
before
your children
October
to
7th?
support Israel. Otherwise,
So,
you are
thank you for the
anti-Semitic.
question, Congresswoman Manning. I believe we are taking steps. I believe you are absolutely right. None of us were prepared for what we saw on after October 7th. And you have my commitment that we will do what is necessary to combat anti-Semitism, but we will also do what is necessary to educate our students in the evils of anti-Semitism as well as the roots of anti-Semitism.
And it's a shame that this disaster finally brought a recognition that that kind of education is necessary. I know you had an anti-Semitism task force. It had no experts on anti-Semitism on the task force. Will you commit to putting together a task force that has experts on anti-Semitism?
It actually did. We did have a faculty member who was a consultant to the Holocaust Museum. So we did have someone on the committee there. But we will definitely have people who are knowledgeable and who are aware of anti-Semitism.
And will you commit to training not just students, but also your faculty members on what anti-Semitism is and the dangers that it presents, not just to Jewish students, but to the foundations of our democracy?
I believe that's a good idea.
Thank you. Chancellor Block, same.
If you don't support Israel, that presents dangers to the foundations of our democracy in the United States. And therefore, we have to train all students and all faculty members that if they don't support Israel, then they are a danger to the United States. Oh my God.
Question for you.
Yes. So we admit that this is a challenge.
And it's been a challenge. I have emails dating back to 2014 from dedicated alumni who tried to alert you of the growing problem with anti-Semitism that was growing on your campus.
So we responded. We've tried to respond with education and obviously with enforcement where there are complaints about specific anti-Semitic events. Developed an online training module on anti-discrimination. We bolstered the part on anti-Semitism. We have orientation.
Are all your students required to take anti-Semitism training?
They're not required to take anti-Semitism. The anti-discrimination module is recommended for all incoming students. Approximately 90% of our students take an online training for it. It's talked about at orientation.
And does that include anti-Semitism training?
It has anti-Semitism discussion. And
do you think it needs more?
I think we need to do more. I would agree.
And do your faculty also need to take that anti-Semitism training?
Yes, we all do. We all do.
I think faculty could benefit also from understanding the challenges of our students today, and I agree.
Okay. And,
wow.
President Holloway, same question to you. By the way, I have been at college in my district, so I understand your roots.
Unbelievable. Ungoddamn believable. Yes, this is, hang on, we'll get back to Jay in a sec. This is a struggle session. They are struggle sessioning the university presidents in order to infuse pro-Zionist training in every part of their university for the students and for the faculty. Bro. I don't think these people understand the way they are behaving is going to bring back actual fascism. I don't think they care. Thank you, though, Tayton. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. I want to say from the beginning that we are living in an age of heightened discrimination and anti-Semitism. Absolutely. The campuses are no different from the rest of the country, and any expression of it, I think, is absolutely horrible. What I also want to say is that we address every instance that's brought to our attention of discriminatory behavior, including anti-Semitism.
Thank you. My time has expired. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. Mr. Goods, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. President Holloway, the Rutgers Newark campus hosts a think tank called the Center for Security, Race, and Rights, or CSRR. In just the past week, CSRR, which astonishingly is 50% funded by your chancellor's discretionary budget, and their director's $232,000 salary, of course, is paid for by the university. Well, again, in just the past week, CSRR, again, a so-called think tank called the Center for Security, Race, and Rights, has exposed its anti-Semitic agenda in a post on X, CSRR called Israel's government, quote, genocidal. Do you think Israel's government's genocidal?
Yes.
Sir, I don't have an opinion on Israel's in terms of that phrase.
You do
sir.
not have an opinion as to whether or not Israel's
You
government
can't give an opinion.
No, sir. I think Israel has a right to exist and to protect itself.
Do you think Israel's government's genocidal?
I think Israel has a right to exist and to protect itself.
It would be deeply problematic for this guy specifically to say that Israel is not being genocidal, because remember, he is a far leftist. And so, like, he can say Israel has a right to exist and that's fine, but if he comes out and says Israel is not like committing a genocide, his entire university will turn against him.
Oh, sir.
But you will not say that Israel's government's not genocidal. You can't say that.
Sir, I believe in the government's right to this. The
You
country's
can't be
right
that
to exist.
surprised by the topic of the discussion today, and you can't say that Israel's government's not genocidal. That's interesting. Another CSRR post said the Biden administration's shift on Israel is a gain that can and must be built on, meaning the Biden administration's betrayal of Israel. Another post from the center said the real threat to American Jews comes not from students, but from MAGA Republicans who are shouting about anti-Semitism the loudest. Do you agree with this? Again, Rutgers-funded think tank, half funded by your chancellor's discretionary budget. Director has a $232,000 salary funded by Rutgers. Do you agree that MAGA Republicans are a threat to American Jews?
Sir, these statements that you're reading, I find all deeply troubling and unsettling, sir.
This would start with a yes or no. Do you think that MAGA Republicans are a threat to American Jews?
I'm not in position to answer that question, sir.
Are you in a position to answer any questions?
Yes,
Do you
I
have
am,
an
sir.
opinion on anything on this subject that's at hand today? I mean, what does that mean? Do you think that anti-Israel political advocacy is an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars by a public university like Rutgers?
I think at a public university, we have to abide by the First Amendment and be a place
So
where...
should Rutgers fund anti-Israel political advocacy?
Sir, we should not be funding anti-Israel advocacy, no.
Okay, that's good to hear. On the 20th anniversary of September 11, CSRR sponsored an event featuring a speaker who was convicted in 2006 for material support of a terrorist group, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. His name is Sami al-Arian, and he pled guilty to several charges. The event was designed to so-called challenge the narrative surrounding 9/11 and how 9/11 supposedly legitimized a war on terror and other imperialist wars and interventions. I should note that 750 New Jerseyans died on 9/11. They were murdered on 9/11. So do you think it's acceptable for New Jersey State University to sponsor an event about 9/11 with a speech by a convicted terrorist conspirator?
I learned about that person's involvement. I don't support that person's ideas in the least. I think they're wildly offensive. I also, well, that's all. I'll just stop there, sir.
I'm sorry?
I was ending my question.
Yeah, well, you were president at that time. Did you do anything about this event taking place on your campus or to prevent future events like this from taking place?
Did you ask me if I would prevent that from happening, sir? Is that what you said?
Again, do you
Who do you guys think is going to be the first person to make a t-shirt with Nick Rekieta's mugshot? There was a brief moment I was like, should I make a t-shirt with Nick Rekieta's? I'm not going to do it though. It's too far out of my lane. I don't think it's appropriate, but someone's going to make a t-shirt with Nick Rekieta's mugshot. And I want to know, I wonder who it's going to be. No, it's not going to be me. But we should start like a betting pool or something. Nick Fuentes should actually do it. Nick Fuentes, like last year, I guess, Nick Rekieta randomly attacked Nick Fuentes for like no good reason. And then after that, he has like the Groyper curse on him, which is basically that you will experience a downfall if you go against the Groypers. So Nick Fuentes should actually slap Nick Rekieta's mugshot on a t-shirt and be like, bro, told you so. Like, holy shit. It is sad, but someone's going to make a t-shirt.
think it's okay for New Jersey State University Rutgers to sponsor an event about 9/11 with a speech by a
probably
convicted terrorist conspirator? You said no, you do not think so.
That's correct, sir.
Those
Did
are
you do
good
anything
guesses.
about it when you learned about it? You were president at the time.
Sir, we are a community of 100,000 people. There are events happening on every day of the campus that I'm not aware of at any given moment.
As noted before, the director of CSRR, Sahar Aziz, has made numerous anti-Semitic statements, again with her $232,000 Rutgers-funded salary. She signed a statement condemning, quote, the racial supremacy of Jewish Zionist nationals, saying that Jews are more privileged than Muslims and delegitimizing both Israel and the U.S. as, quote, racist settler colonial states. Given that statement and her center's anti-Semitic pro-terrorist activities, do you think it's appropriate for Rutgers to continue to fund this office and pay her salary of $232,000? Is that okay? Is that cool with you and Rutgers?
There's very little that I find easy about the center, sir. I personally disagree deeply with a lot of the ideas that are come from that center.
Are you going to close the center, or you just keep on funding it, keep paying that salary?
I have no plans to close the center, sir.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Good. Ms. Wild, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. President Holloway, just as an incidental matter, as ranking member of the House Ethics Committee, I want to thank you for your early service to that committee. I hope it was a valuable experience for you. While I understand that free speech is a critical tenet of our democracy, I think we all agree on that, I do worry about whether the campus protests we've seen this year veer into hate speech. Thankfully, the
How are we
protests on the
defining hate
campuses
speech?
in my district, Pennsylvania 7, which hosts a number of wonderful schools like Lehigh University, Muhlenberg College, Lafayette College, and so forth, the protests have been peaceful and respectful, and I'm deeply appreciative of our students for that. Let me also say that I commend the restraint shown by some of you in not creating a police state on your campuses. There is a fine line between law and order and oppression of the right to protest. And that's a really fine line, and I respect the very difficult job you've all had this year. As a Jewish mother of 2 young adults, I have to say that I am deeply saddened and dismayed by the increased evidence of anti-Semitism across our country and around the world. And much as I truly believe that college is a place where young people learn to think critically, I also have some concerns about whether students are getting enough guidance on this issue from administrations. So I want to start, President Schill, 7 members of your advisory committee on preventing anti-Semitism and hate, including the co-chair, resigned after the university brokered an agreement with encampment organizers. In a follow-up statement, the university claimed that the committee's charge and its work remain incredibly important to our community. Our commitment to protecting Jewish students, faculty, and staff is unwavering. My question is, why did Northwestern fail to consult with that committee before yielding to the demands of the protesters?
That was never in the purview of that committee. That committee was designed to assess the extent of anti-Semitism on campus and then to propose educational and other ways to deal with it. It wasn't to deal with an existing encampment. And quite honestly, there were, I believe, 16 members, 17 members, most of whom didn't have expertise in this area. And, you know, there is a limit to how many people one can consult when one is talking to students around the clock.
I understand that there's a limitation on time and that kind of thing, but it seems to me that you had a ready-made committee that could have been asked to weigh in on this. And obviously 7 of the members of that committee felt the same because they stepped down. Have you taken steps to replace those faculty and staff members?
So we are going to constitute a task force, and that task force is going to be designed to come up with new strategies to combat anti-Semitism. What we're going to do is ask that committee to look at the wisdom of other anti-Semitism committees around the country. Indeed, this committee wrote a report I think 2 weeks ago, in which it summarized the Harvard Anti-Semitism Committee, and I will be asking them to look at the
Okay, well,
recommendations.
I hope that you will consult with that task force or committee in the future when you've got this kind of situation. I've got limited time, and I do want to ask, and this can be to any of you, hopefully all of you, with short answers. As we are looking forward to the fall semester, obviously we have the potential for ongoing challenges in this regard with respect to campus protests and encampments and potential violence. What are your administrations doing now or planning to do over the summer to prepare for the next school year?
That's a good
Why don't we start with
question.
you, Chancellor Block?
Yes, so I will not be there this fall, but I would seriously recommend that during our orientation this coming summer, we spend extra time discussing these issues about respectful protest, time, place, and manner, and we make sure that our students are prepared for what the rules are with regard to
Mr. Lawrence?
appropriate protest.
I think these are always learning opportunities on our campuses, and we shouldn't be surprised in a polarized time and a challenging time for the nation that we see that exhibited on campus. So I think this is an opportunity to talk about protests, but also about a conversation over differences, and all of us on campus and throughout the society can play a role of role modeling for students how we have conversations between and among people who have very strong differences of opinion on fundamental issues.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. And I know my time has run out. So what I would ask of all of you is that you give very careful consideration to how you're going to approach this in the upcoming school year, and perhaps submit to the committee your ideas, which I hope will be some sort of template for other schools. Thank you very much. I yield back, Madam Chair, and thank you for the accommodation.
Thank you, Ms. Wild.
All right, guys. Well, we've been listening to this for about 3 hours now, and we've learned some stuff, but I'm going to be honest, I'm starting to get a little bit bored, and I want to look into this Nick Rekieta thing, and I'm going to be back tonight streaming. So does anyone mind if we kind of cut this short? I know some people just got here, but guess what? You can go back to the beginning. Don't miss Elise Stefanik. She's a bitch. But I've about had my fill of being told that we're anti-Semitic for everything for today. So I think I'm going to cut it short and go get some dinner. But remember, don't worry. Remember, I'll be back later, because we are going to do tonight around 11 o'clock Eastern time. We are going to do, well, I'm done, Tate, and I don't care. Send me a timestamp and I will watch the equity ramp. But I want to go eat dinner. I had like 2 eggs all day today. Okay, it's 8 p.m. But tonight, excuse me. No, Sassy, this isn't true. It's literally all over Twitter. Sassy. Their mugshot is literally posted to my Twitter. So don't say it's only on Kiwi Farms. I don't go on Kiwi Farms, and the mugshot is on Twitter. So tonight at 11 p.m., we're going to be returning back for Nitwits, where we are going to watch Dave Rubin and James Lindsay shill for Israel for an hour and do some commentary on it. And I'm sure we're going to talk about Nick Rekieta too, because I don't know if there's any avoiding it. Really, maybe just a little bit. Well, you just Googled it? Sassy. Okay, hang on. Seriously? I swear to God. The mugshot is literally on my Twitter. I will show it to you. It's only on Kiwi Farms. Hang on. Their mugshot is on my Twitter. So I would say that's confirmed. Anyway, guys, I will be back at 11 o'clock tonight. Thank you for hanging out and watching some congressional testimony with me. I really do appreciate it. Go take a little bit of a break. Come back for more gossipy, juicy stuff a little bit later if you want to. And if not, I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. and we will be doing happy hour, where we will drink beer and watch a leftist training. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon.